Good morning. It's cold outside. Welcome. It is Friday, January 17th, 2020. It is 6:20 in the morning. Maybe that's a number you can bet. Again, it's 21 degrees, and it's going to get up only to 29 today. We'll be back with the weather in just a little bit. It's rare we put a sports story first, but if you're wondering, Carlos Beltran is out as the manager of the Mets. In local news, the New York Education Department says Yonkers is outpacing other districts of the same size in graduation rates. We got to see what the mean is, though, just to be sure. Jobs, safety, and funding were discussed last night at an Indian Point advisory meeting. People hoping for jobs will come. That jobs will come from the disassembling of that center. White Plains hospital staffers have received training on mass casualty situations, and the accused vigilante killer is acquitted in his second murder trial. Those stories and more coming right up. Of course, impeachment has begun. The Rangers won last night. They beat the Islanders again. Stay right there. We'll be right back with the weather. Alrighty, here we go. The weather's brought to you this morning by United Hebrew, exclusively by United Hebrew of New Rochelle, voted one of America's best rehabilitation and senior care campuses, and it's right here in New Rochelle. Visit uhgc.com, and here we go. It's 21. It doesn't feel that cold. I can't tell you why. That's just my take. The only high we'll have today, though, is 29. Extra layers are needed. Sunny, still rather breezy. Highs around 29, as we said, but wind chills will be in the teens through the afternoon. We're experiencing gusts up to 25 miles an hour. Tonight, clear to start with clouds building overnight, lows around 15, and the wind will be lighter, but it will still feel like 5 to 10 degrees. The big story is tomorrow. Listen in. Cloudy during the morning with our first few snowflakes arriving around 11 o'clock. Between that and 2 p.m. Snow will be moderate to heavy at times once it arrives and through the early evening. Again, most of the accumulation as usual will be north of 287, but here in the Sound Shore by the coast, it's likely to be less. There may be some accumulations, but things will be warming up some as we get towards Sunday. Now again, some of the areas will have 2 to 4 inches, maybe 5. Now Saturday night, cloudy with any lingering mix of rain showers ending, mainly before midnight. Temperatures will hold fairly steady in the mid to upper 30s, which means slush. Sunday, partly sunny, breezy, and chilly. The high around 37, wind chills in the 20s. Sunday night, partly cloudy with lows around 23 degrees. But hopefully, the snow will have melted. And that is that story. Let's move on now to the top stories. First, the top of the hour is brought to you by United Hebrew of New Rochelle, a top-rated campus of senior care. Visit uhgc.com. Aging Issues Management and the Aging Issues Radio component of them. The law firm of Payne & Kahn. Plug in virtual reality and Dominic's Fine Cigars. And remember, it's Dominic's Fine Cigars who will bring you this week's picks of the week at 8 o'clock. Dominic's Fine Cigars, licensed retailer with a big selection, including Arturo Fuente, Padrones, and more. Dominic's Fine Cigars, located at 204 Boston Post Road in Larchmont. They're open 7 days. This is Mornings with Bob Marrone. I am he. This is Radio Westchester, the train station at the train station. You can listen live on RadioWestchester.com. You can go to the aggregator app, MyTuner Radio, and if you go and touch either Mornings with Marrone or RadioWestchester.com, you can tell Alexa, just put RadioWestchester.com on. We're also on Facebook, Instagram, Periscope, and YouTube. And as of today, actually, we're also on iTunes. Welcome to the program. Let's get to those top stories. New numbers from the State Education Department show graduation rates across New York are on the rise, and one Westchester district is outpacing other districts of the same size. My pause was deliberate. The Yonkers School District has the highest graduation rate among the largest 5 city school districts across New York State in 2019. Now, statewide, before you get all excited, statewide the graduation rate is only up 1% from last year to nearly 83%. Now, Yonkers finished higher than that at 88%, and graduated more students than the 4 other biggest districts in the state, including Syracuse, Buffalo, Rochester, and New York City. You will forgive me, this is commentary, I'm labeling it. After all I've learned about school districts in the last 15 years, I would double check those numbers and see how they're being counted. Job safety and funding was some of the concerns raised last night by residents and local officials during a meeting on the closure of the Indian Point Energy Center. This in News 12 this morning. The Buchanan-based nuclear power plant is scheduled to shut down for good in just over a year. State Senator Peter Harkin was among local officials. You'll pardon me, I had to make an adjustment there in the sound. State Senator Peter Harkin was among local officials and residents who attended the Wednesday night Indian Point Citizen Advisory Panel. Now, Holtec, they're the company poised to buy and tear down the plant. They naturally are going to need lots of people. It's going to take 12 to 15 years. So hopefully that can fill some of the economic gap that will be opened as a result of the closure of the plant. It is 6:27. White Plains Hospital's emergency department took part in an 8-hour disaster training course to prepare for mass casualty situations. This in News 12 this morning. Upon completion, clinicians should have a better understanding of how to effectively handle patients and coordinate medical practices in a time of crisis. News 12, again, who gave us the story, is told the drill was an eye-opener and complete with difficult choices and lessons. And it's good that we have it. Heaven forbid we have not had any kind of a mass crisis here in Westchester, but if we did, it's nice to know that we are preparing. Another story out of News 12 and Lohud this morning. You'll pardon me. David Carlson walked into court Thursday uncertain of his fate, but left a free man after standing trial for the second time in the killing of an accused rapist. This came out of Orange County this morning. The 48-year-old Sparrow Bush father of 3 breathed a sigh of relief and hugged his attorneys after hearing he was found not guilty of manslaughter and criminally negligent homicide in the 2013 shooting death of an accused rapist and fugitive, Norris Acosta Sanchez. Carlson claimed he was recruited by police to help capture Acosta Sanchez when he shot him in self-defense. The not guilty verdict comes after a jury originally found Carlson guilty in 2016. The verdict was successfully appealed, and the case was tried again. Now, Carlson says he could hardly believe his ears when the verdict was announced. He said, and we quote, "I wasn't sure if I was hearing him clearly, to be honest. It just felt great." And he says, now I can go home. The state's new criminal justice reform mandates came into play Thursday when Grafton Thomas pleaded not guilty in Rockland County Court to charges of trying to kill Jews with a machete after barging into a late December Hanukkah party in Muncie. This in Lohud today. Judge Kevin Russo also ordered Thomas to undergo psychiatric evaluation, a process Thomas's lawyer has started in federal court, where Thomas faces 10 hate crime-related charges resulting from the same December 28 attack. Thomas, 37, of Greenwood Lake, as you know, is now, he's actually still in jail for a $5 million bail requirement. And it should be interesting to see if they let this man out, who clearly has mental illness problems. Yonkers police are warning people about a utility phone scam targeting city residents. This in Lohud. Police said today that yesterday, a variation of schemes making their way around the city where residents are receiving calls that show up on caller IDs as, quote, Yonkers. The calls appear to come from a Yonkers extension beginning with 377, and they're not originating from city officials, but they are asking people for money in lieu of threats to close down some of their utilities. And we're going to go straight to sports because this story is a big item in the news. If you've been on another planet or haven't had a chance to look at the news in the last couple of days, he's gone. Carlos Beltran has been fired as the manager in the Mets of the Mets and likely to be suspended. And it looks now that they're evaluating several different people. Buck Showalter is one. And I've got a list here. I actually put it out of place, but here it is. Some of the other people that may be managing the Mets, if you are a Mets fan. If you're a Yankee fan, you're probably enjoying all this chaos. But Hensley Mullins, Eduardo Perez, Tim Boger, Tony DeFrancisco, Louis Rojas, Buck Showalter. That's the big name. In fact, he made the back page of the Post today. Joe McEwing and Kevin Long, the former Mets hitting coach. That's funny. They fired him, but now they may want him back as the hitting coach. Stay right there while we take a break. You're listening to Radio Westchester. It is 6:31, the bottom of the hour, brought to you by Aging Issues Management, the law firm of Payne & Com, Dominic's Fine Cigars, and Plug-in Virtual Reality. All right, let's take a look at sports in a little more depth as we pass through 6:32. Just going back now to the issue regarding the Mets. This was Joel Sherman in the Post today. He said the Mets hired Carlos Beltran to be their manager less than 3 months ago. By Wednesday night, they were convinced they no longer had that Carlos Beltran. They knew a rookie manager, especially in New York, particularly for a win-now team, would face obstacles, but one of those would not be credibility with players. He could walk into a room and instantly command the attention and respect of those outside it, or so they thought. This was a huge selling point when the Mets decided to forego experience and go with Beltran. But nonetheless, he is gone now, Carlos Beltran, and no one knows who the next Mets manager will be. Now, let's go. Odell Beckham's in the news again. Although this, I'm not sure what he did. Let's get to it. Odell Beckham Jr. just got called for illegal use of hands, says this item in the news today. An arrest warrant has been issued for the former Giant star over an incident after an NCAA game Monday in which he slapped a security guard's butt in the winning team's locker room. The wide receiver is facing simple battery charges for striking the behind of the officer who was talking to members of the LSU Tigers. It doesn't say, at least we're not going to go that deep into whether it was a man or a woman. I guess it's material at this point. Now, there are a couple of local stories that have stuck in our craw today. We always have something for everybody. Some of these stories will please those who like to bash the left, and on these stories, I love to bash the left myself. School's chancellor, that openly racist school chancellor, and yes, that's my opinion. I'm going to the grave with that one, unless my opinion changes tomorrow. Richard Carranza was jeered off the stage at a packed town hall meeting at a Queens middle school Thursday as anger over school safety boiled over. The Department of Education boss faced the wrath of more than 400 parents at MS 74 Nathaniel Hawthorne and Oakland Gardens. Exasperated, and this is one parent, Katie Sterling, exasperated, she told school officials how her daughter had twice allegedly been assaulted by a female classmate. Her daughter's tormentor was never suspended and remains in class. Does it sound familiar? Have we been talking about this for days, months, even 2 years now? MS 158 is one of the district's highly regarded schools and has been hit with a string of ugly incidents in recent months, including a vicious lunchroom fight last week and a classroom sexual assault last month. Both incidents resulted in arrests. Tired of an attempt at reassurances by School District 26 Superintendent Danielle Gonta, Sterling had approached the dais to give Carranza and other officials a piece of her mind. And she's absolutely right to do that. Love to get her on the show because this whole idea of restorative discipline and it's just behavior or culture, what's learned and needs to be forgiven, bullspit, Carranza. And he'll turn this into something racial as well. He almost always does. And how did I forget this? Sorry, I got to go back to sports for a second. I got my stuff out of order here. You will forgive me, won't you? The Rangers defeated the Islanders again. Tom from Pelham last night was texting, rather depressed. I don't blame him. The Rangers won 3-2. It was the first word out of David Quidd's mouth that he was shocked. In fact, he called it, this is a quote by the coach Ballsy, in that they won the game because the Islanders did play very well. The Rangers played pretty well too, but this is shouting out to Tom from Pelham. Tom, your team is still the better team, TEAM. Yes, the Rangers probably have a collection of better, younger players, but they don't know how to play as a team yet. They're still learning. They're still in kindergarten. You've got a shot at the cup if you manage it correctly. Now, another story that is, I want to get it out, that affects us locally. This really bothered me. And then we'll get to the national news. You can't make this up, said David Marcus in the New York Post, and he was right. This is just one of those things, again, where the left goes too far afield of itself, even when it disagrees with people that used to be part of their, and probably still are, a part of the larger, in this case, feminist movement. Now get this. Organized, there was an event at the New York Public Library, and shame on them, organized by the Women's Liberation Front, a feminist. Now, how could it be more feminist than that? The Women's Liberation Front, an organization, a feminist organization that supports, now please listen closely, a biological definition of gender. And it was called An Evening with Canceled Women, unquote. It was to feature 5 fearless feminists speaking out about women's rights to a life free of pervasive harassment, which the Me Too movement is all about, silencing, and many women have had to be silent when touched. We're finding that out these days. Coercion, violence, forced lying, and endless punishment. Anyway, that's what they stand for. That's a pretty good feminist creed by anyone's definition that ought to make someone with a left badge pretty proud. However, the message is now apparently unwelcome in one of the Big Apple's premier cultural institutions. In a blog post, WFL's Natasha Chart recounted how she was informed last week, just a day before the deposit for the room rental was due, that the library wouldn't be hosting the event. The library gave no reason, but it's the only plausible explanation, says Marcus, is that in this case, the trans community, a subset within those movements, is upset. Well, people have a right to define things. This is a question of definition. It really is. And whether you like it or not, that we're going to run into that. And I don't have any problem with someone changing their sex or what their identity is. And as a question of identity, fine. But as a question of science, it's about DNA, it's about chromosomes, it's about, how could I forget, genes, et cetera, et cetera. And that's all these women were trying to say. It's a definition. If you want to change the definition, you want to make it your definition, it may have to do with identity and how you wish to refer to something. But it doesn't change the bottom line. So these people, even if you don't agree with them, they ought to be heard. You can't ban them. That is not biased or racist. They're talking about science. And, the left brings up science, rightfully so, when it comes to global warming and a number of other issues, secularism, etc. But sometimes when it doesn't suit them, they're just as unreasonable as anybody else on the planet. All right, as we transition at 6:40, we'll do our break at 6:45 to national news. I want to cover a couple of things before we get into impeachment and get everybody's knickers in a twist. We do have a couple of accomplishments that the president needs to be acknowledged for. And one that I threw him under the bus the other day, and I carefully removed him and apologized, and fixed his suit, and said, all right, Mr. President, and this is, that's withholding the $8 billion of help to Puerto Rico. Well, the Trump administration yesterday officially announced Wednesday that they're releasing more than $8 billion in disaster aid to Puerto Rico after drawing intense ire from congressional Democrats over a mysterious months-long freeze on the sorely needed cash. Speaking at an unrelated event in East Harlem, Housing and Urban Development Secretary Ben Carson said his agency was moving to give Puerto Rico $8.2 billion. That from the brain surgeon who somehow mysteriously in one of the locker rooms, or operating rooms, had his own brain removed before he became a cabinet member. It's a strange thing. You know, I read his first book. I love the guy. I think I read his second book too. Independent, America-loving, pull yourself up by your bootstraps. But he still, though. Actually, they didn't take his brain out. I'm sorry. They removed his spine. All right. Now, some of the other things here. Now, this is cool. And it's not perfect, but let's give the president his due. President Donald Trump signed a trade agreement Wednesday with China that is expected to boost exports from U.S. farmers and manufacturers, protect American trade secrets, and lower tensions in a long-running dispute between the world's two biggest economies. This out of the Associated Press. Trump said during a White House ceremony that the deal is righting the wrongs of the past. He promoted the signings as a way of delivering economic justice for American workers and said, quote, "We mark a sea change in international trade." Now, say what you will, as some callers like to say, if you're a Trump hater and think he can't do anything right. Well, he came into office with his gun pointed to China and took a lot of risks. And this isn't perfect yet, but it's still early in its evolution, and he has to be given credit for it. Has nothing to do with whether or not he should be impeached and or removed from office, separate issue. Nixon would have been a great president if he kept his head on straight. Okay, now before we get, here's one of my favorite stories. God, do I love this story. We often talk on this show, at least it's one of the themes that runs through the show now that I'm sort of free to put forward opinions that can weave through a show. And that is how America has evolved to where, and you see it now in the lying scandal in baseball, okay? Everybody who goes to work knows that they have to leave truth at the front door. Integrity has lost its currency. It's lost its value. We say it has, but everybody knows that the world the way it is, I've got to be able to get away with what I can because I've got to take care of my own. And no one has faith in our institutions anymore. They don't have faith in their bosses. The bosses don't have faith in their employees, which is why now younger employees, I don't like it, the way some younger employees behave. And what we're seeing throughout the country these days is not baby boomers, in fact, they insult baby boomers as young people moving from job to job, not being committed, not giving a hoot whether they do a good job unless they're going to be rich tomorrow and entrepreneurial rich tomorrow. But we created those monsters. We created those monsters over the last 30 years by showing our loss of integrity in every single aspect of American life. Anyway, we see it now in the political system. I read a piece the other day that kept me up at night, and it had to do with the gentleman that worked for Trump, the alt-right guy, whose name escapes me now. But he told a group of people out in Europe about how the American election should work. And he said, I told the Trump administration constantly, and I continue to advise them, it's not about the economy. It's not making an enemy of the Democrats. It's not making an enemy of people of color or immigrants. It's making an enemy of the press. It's all about getting your narrative out there. So why do you want these kids to give a damn? Anyway, here's the piece that bugged me. Now, this is going to shock you, this number. Goldman Sachs, August financial services firm. They're getting fined a $1.9 billion legal charge because they have to settle. Well, imagine this. They have to settle a legal claim that they, in effect, and I'm using the term loosely because it's a complicated affair, but that they laundered money. So if you're going to walk into Goldman Sachs and not trust them, if you're going to walk into Wells Fargo and be given an account that you didn't ask for because some people think it's cool that their careers will get better, if you can't trust any car dealership when you walk in the door, you walk into a sea of dishonesty. If you see what goes on in our political system and now in baseball and God in football and everywhere else, why should anyone who goes to work for a living put their company, which tells lies. They tell lies all the time. My company used to have this thing on the board. I heard they took it out. Integrity. That was the first thing on it. And it was the last thing they had at the end. Integrity. I forget. Citizenship, responsible citizenship. The only responsible citizenship they wanted was when they wanted to look good for United Way, they wanted you to contribute money. Okay. What they wanted was the citizenship to give them their money. And the contempt that all these firms have for individual investors, save a few, save some financial advisors, is itself contemptible. America needs to look at itself again. America needs to look at its morals. But $1 billion, and you know what? They're going to pay it. They're going to pay it because it's cheaper than being honest. And look now, the J.P. Morgan Chase, run by a guy who famously said, we need to be able to, in Europe, play by the same rules, Europe and Asia, that they do there in order to make money. Well, we used to market the fact that America didn't play by loosey-goosey rules, that America had regulations. Heaven forbid, we shouldn't have. America had regulations. It had a tight market where you could trust what you were being told. So anyway, they made $35 billion this year. How much of it did you get? All righty, let's take a break. We got to do the weather again, which I love because it's not political. I'm telling you, sooner or later, I'm going to take a break from all of this. Where's the goodness? All righty. The weather is what it is. Well, no, it's not. There are people who say everything's a hoax. Wonder who that is. Could be the weather's a hoax. Well, this is the hoax weather this morning. It's 21 degrees, getting up to 29 today. They're saying wear extra layers. It's going to be sunny, but still rather breezy. Only getting up to 29, as I said. Wind chills, though, will be into the teens because we have wind gusts at 25 miles an hour. Tonight, clear to start with clouds building overnight. Lows around 15 degrees, and the wind will be lighter, but it will still feel like 5 to 10. That's tonight. Now, the real story, so please listen up, is tomorrow if you're going to be traveling. It'll be cloudy in the morning, but snowflakes will arrive about 11 o'clock or somewhere between 11 and 2 p.m. The snow will be moderate to heavy at times once it arrives and through early evening. Now, here's the catch. While roads will be icy and snow-covered during the afternoon and early evening, they're mostly talking about north of 287. So be aware of that. That's north of 287. We may have some here along the Sound Shore. If you're down by the Jersey Shore and Brooklyn or the places closer to the ocean, you'll probably not have a lot of snow that sticks. You might get an inch and it'll probably melt later on. And let's do hope it melts because later on, in the late evening, we'll have a high about 36, but it will get down to the mid and upper 30s. It should all melt by the time, though, we get into Sunday. Partly sunny, breezy, and chilly. Highs around 37 degrees. And the weather was brought to you exclusively by United Hebrew of New Rochelle, voted one of America's best rehabilitation and senior care campuses, and it's right here in New Rochelle. Visit uhdc.com. The bottom of the hour is also supported by Aging Issues Management, the law firm of Payne & Kahn, Plug-in Virtual Reality, and Dominic's Fine Cigars. Don't forget at 8 o'clock today we get Jake's Picks. Only 2 games this week. And that will be sponsored by Dominic's Fine Cigars, licensed retailer with a big selection, including Arturo Fuente, Padrons, and more. Dominic's Fine Cigars, located at Boston Post Road in Larchmont. They're open 7 days. Scouted the place the other day, stopped in, said hello, thanked them for their sponsorship, but also checked out the room from where we will be broadcasting on the Friday before the Super Bowl. So we'll have the TVs, and I don't know, I'm going to wear a mask if a lot of people are smoking cigars. I love them, but I'm allergic. Plus, I'm a smoking addict. As much as I love the stuff, can't do it. All right, let's get into what's going to happen next week. And I'm trying to be I'm going to give both sides of the story in this case, because there are 2 sides to it. Well, the House votes to send articles to the Senate, sticking mostly to party lines. The House voted 228 to 193 Wednesday to send 2 articles of impeachment against President Trump to the Senate and approve a 7-member team of Democratic prosecutors. Chief Justice John Roberts is expected to start swearing in senators. He's actually already started that. Trump called it, though, a hoax, and I wish he wouldn't do that. Even if he feels that it's political, he shouldn't call it a hoax, but he did. It will be only the third impeachment trial in U.S. history. Meanwhile, new documents from Lev Parnas, and we'll talk about that in a moment, an associate of Rudy Giuliani, were called profoundly alarming, but again, by a congressional Democrat, and have raised questions about the possible surveillance of former ambassador to Ukraine, Marie Yovanovitch, before her ouster. Now, there is this sense, and I'm going to get to it, that the Democrats are doing this for political reasons. And of course that's true, because the Democrats know that there will be no conviction in the Senate. And when we retreat to the fact that the way the Constitution is set up and the way the impeachment process is set up, the Founding Fathers wanted it to be so difficult, and wisely so, because elections rule the roost in this country. They wanted it to be so difficult to remove a sitting president that even his party would have to vote against him. And we're not going to see that in this case. And so that's all fair and right. However, they too are being political because they don't want the witness call, because one of the out cards that still exists, get out of intellectual jail cards, is that there's no firsthand knowledge. Now, if people like Giuliani or Parnas, and I'm not saying it's so, but I believe it, but it doesn't make it so that I believe it, and the former security advisor, if they say the president told them, well, that would end their ability to say it never happened. So what they should do is stick to the gun that I use. Yeah, it happened, but so what? Okay? We don't think it justifies removal from office, but they don't want that out there because of the campaign. So both sides are being political. Now here's what one of the one editorial I found. They said they want a real trial. This was in the Daily News. President Trump's political trial, with the slim possibility of conviction, carrying a sentence of removal from office, finally came into focus as House Democrats named 7 managers. They're actually prosecutors in the parlance of having a trial. The burden of proof is on those managers to show that in trying to withhold congressional authorized aid to compel foreign influence in the next election, Trump forfeited the nation's trust. Again, I myself, I don't believe I would remove him from office for that. But as they are sworn in as jurors, and this is the stickler here, by Chief Justice John Roberts, the burden of fairness is on Senate Republicans, especially those who claim not to be knee-jerk Trumpites, to facilitate the legitimate proceeding, not to go through the motions acquittal. Now, politically, the Republicans would want that. And I get that, because they know they're not going to convict him. Why go through the show of a trial? On the other hand, they're about to take an oath, those that did and those that will. And I'm wondering, and this is just fair, whether you're a Republican or a pro-Trump or an anti-Trump or not, they shouldn't take the oath. They should in some way recuse themselves. Certainly Lindsey Graham should, when they said, I don't even want to know, I don't want to hear evidence, I'm acquitting. If you're saying you're going to acquit beforehand, you don't belong in the dock. At least give it consideration. Now, again, I can see why they would acquit him, but again, it's all political. Both sides, in that way, embarrass us. It might have been, and this was in now, however, I need to hold on to one thing, though, firmly. I do believe the Congress is doing their duty. I do believe that it is a fair question, is this above the pale? I don't question that he did it. And it would have been nice in that instance had they had even the final last bit of proof that would be necessary to prove it. But the thing is, it is their duty to impeach the president. That's our system. And all I would say to the Republican senators, it's your duty to take that oath and take it to heart. And frankly, if it needs to be revoked, if you really think this is a hoax, as the president suggests, then maybe you should just not have a trial. Maybe you should provoke a constitutional crisis if you really believe that. Everybody's playing by the rules. The same way that Mitch McConnell did. When Mitch McConnell would not allow one of Obama's judge nominees to go. It's because it was in his prerogative. It was in the law. Similarly, the law allows the Congress to do what it's doing. And the law will also allow the Senate to do what it likely will do, acquit the president. So we need to go through this. That's what makes our democracy work. Although I am one of those people who believes that our democracy is in great peril. And what we're going to do about it, I do not know. Now, some of the things regarding the next election, and let's talk about what's going on behind the scenes regarding these witnesses. Now, this is Parnas. Parnas, he's the guy that wants to testify, and he said, and I quote, Lev Parnas, Rudy Giuliani's former associate who stands at the heart of the impeachment inquiry, has, now get this, has threatened to release a new photo of himself with Donald Trump every time the president denies knowing him. Even since Parnas and his associate Igor Fruman were arrested on campaign finance charges in October, Trump has tried to distance himself from them. He told reporters at the time, quote, I don't know those gentlemen. Now, it's possible I have a picture with them because I have a picture with everybody. Now, that's true, and you got to be fair to the president with that. I don't know them. Now, speaking on CNN's New Day early Thursday, though, Parnas accused Trump of lying about the nature of their relationship and said he has evidence to prove it. Quote, he said, I thought they were going to shut me up, make me look like the scapegoat, and try to blame me for stuff that I haven't done. But with God's help and a great legal team that I have beside me, we were able to get the information out. And he said, I will release a photo each time Trump denies knowing me. So who knows? But that is an interesting challenge that he made. Now, the other issue that's out there now is this out of the New York Post. A Trump-boosting congressional candidate from Connecticut claimed Wednesday he was just drunkenly kidding with some pals when he texted about spying on Marie Yovanovitch, the former U.S. ambassador to the Ukraine. Robert Hyde, who has mounted a long-shot Republican bid to represent Connecticut's 5th District, offered the curious explanation in response to House Intelligence Chairman Adam Schiff, his Tuesday night release of a batch of text messages saying that, I was just kidding around. But some of the texts are pretty damning. He was in touch with Parnas, and he and Parnas were going back and forth, and he was actually telling Parnas where she could be found. He said she's next to the embassy. Hyde wrote one text citing contacts he supposedly had in the Ukrainian capital. They will let me know when she's on the move, he said. In a more ominous exchange, Hyde pitched Parnas on a business deal involving his contacts, and he said they're willing to help if you would like a price. But once again, that annoys some people who support the president, because it reinforces that he did what he's accused of have done. But again, it doesn't mean he should be removed. Now, this troubled me, and here's where listeners should be fair to this broadcaster. Because I said it when President Obama showed his chicken side. It's the thing that soured me on President Trump early on. And it was what Russia did and hacking our elections. And they did it. It wasn't the Ukrainians. And this whole thing, as the former White House advisor said, it's all about the media. Just attack the media, make up your own stories. Attack the media, make up your own stories. And it's just, this is the biggest threat we have before us, folks. And that's why the Democrats feel that the Republican president reaching out to Ukraine, or any president reaching out to Ukraine for help in a political matter, is a serious issue. And I agree with them, it's a serious issue. Whether or not the president should be removed is 100% predicated on, will his own party agree? And they don't, so he's not going to be removed. However, listen to this story. Lo and behold, it happened again. Russia's trying to hack our election. The latest explosive report comes from the New York Times. As the impeachment inquiry kicked off in November, Russian hackers began targeting the Ukrainian energy company at the center of the storm, Burisma. It's the one that President Donald Trump wanted investigated in search of anything damaging it might be able to use against the presumed 2020 rival Joe Biden. But that's not the issue now. We already know what happened there. Trump first asked President Volodymyr Zelensky of Ukraine to dig up dirt on Biden as a personal favor. Then he publicly asked the same of China. Now, Russian hackers have apparently stepped up to do it for him. This is their opening salvo in a brand new assault against American democracy in 2020. Imagine the future we're looking at, one in which every country in the world has an incentive to spy on American homes and businesses. A world in which foreign intelligence services mine our citizens for embarrassing revelations on anything from financial blunders to adultery. Yet to this very day, the White House has no robust strategy, nor did Barack Obama, by the way, to counter this interference in our elections. This is a good legislation, but there is good legislation, rather, but that too is being blocked by Republicans. In the meantime, instead of doing all he can to keep Kremlin agents from hijacking our democratic process, the President of the United States has gone out of his way to encourage them. Remember when Trump wagged his finger at a laughing Putin and told him with a grin, quote, "Don't meddle in the elections," unquote? Well, Putin isn't an idiot, says this piece. He got the message. In short, you're welcome to get involved in American elections as long as it helps Donald Trump. Now, here's the deal. I've already gone on record. I've been staying up nights. In fact, I did finally write to the former mayor of New York, Bloomberg, that I will work my butt off to get him elected if he'll only hire me, and I will take a hiatus from this radio station to do so. Because I do believe that we are in a crisis in our democracy that millions of Americans probably don't appreciate because they either like or don't like what's going on. And here's my point. As strongly as I feel about him getting elected, I do also have to accept the fact that tomorrow, if the Russians wanted to help him, I would have to refute that. So if you don't mind that the Russians helped get him elected the first time, or at least tried to, if it doesn't bother you that they're hacking our elections, and the reasons for that are that you like the changes, and this is up to you, this is democracy, that Donald Trump has brought forth, you like the style that he's brought forth, you like the authoritative style that he's brought forth, fine. That's your right. But if you're willing to accede to a foreign power's interruption in our system and challenge of a democracy, that is unfortunate. And so, I'd like to see the real centrist that he is, Michael Bloomberg, be the president. I think we need a centrist right now. I think some of our friends on the far left are going to go too far and can't get elected. I think Biden can get elected, but I keep worrying whether or not he's going to fall asleep tomorrow. And that's troubling. I think the way the thing's evolving, and I forget her name, the last woman standing other than Elizabeth Warren. Thank you, Klobuchar. I think she's liable to be the vice presidential candidate, another centrist, center-left. But I still like Bloomberg, and I would love to see him get elected. Love. I think the country's in great need of him right now. Because he has so much of his own money, he can't be bought off, and everybody else can, does, and will be. But would I allow the Russians? Would the Russians, if they could secretly get him elected, would I want to see that? No, because this democracy, I've been doing some research for future shows, and you'd be shocked over the short lives of certain governments and certain institutions. For example, Constantinople, when it became the power of Rome, when it became when Constantine moved the capital of the empire from Rome to Constantinople, he established it also as a bit of a theocracy. It was a Christian Catholic city. It only lasted 300 years. We've done 2 and change. There's no sure thing that this Borgata of ours is going to continue. Either we accept the fact that we're a nation of laws with a free press, with parties that are allowed to call into question the activities of the other party, Democrats and Republicans, whoever else there is like, and the fact that we have a slow-moving, rigid government that prefers compromise and that is sometimes ineffective and slow. If we don't want that, fine, but we ought to face the fact that that's where we're headed. So, just a thought on this Friday morning. We're going to say hello to an old friend who's in the studio right now. He's doing some business here at the train station. He's pushing a candidate I just didn't support. So we'll ask him about that in a moment. It is Friday, January 17th, 2020. You're listening to Mornings with Bob Marrone. Here's the lineup for today. Vince Russo is going to join us at 7:20. Janelle Albritton from the Mount Vernon and actually now Westchester County Post will join us at 7:35. Steve Callis with sports at 7:50. 8 o'clock, Jake's Pick, sponsored by Dominic's Fine Cigars. Al Tarantino, city councilman from District 4 here in New Rochelle at 8:20. And Dr. Victor Sternberg joins us at what did I say, District? Yes, District 2, thank you. Dr. Victor Sternberg, the longtime host of Politics in Your Health, joins us at 8:35. And once again, we'll be talking with our friends from Choice at 9 o'clock. About, I'll give you just one little tidbit from what's going to happen at 9 o'clock when we talk about it. We're here at the train station, and so we get a chance to see a lot of homeless people. One woman in particular goes back and forth every day with her cart. She must be 80, God bless her, and I worry about her. Now, if the people from Choice were able to help her, and if it was so that she needed a psychiatrist, she would have to wait 8 weeks. And if she went to the hospital, unless she was suicidal, they probably wouldn't even have a bed for her. And had she actually had money but was only out there because of mental illness, and they wanted to set her up with a psychiatrist because she had the money, well, even if she had, rather, insurance, she would not be able to get a psychiatrist because no psychiatrist will take insurance anymore. They want cash. So now we have these conglomerates, these coordinated, which are good things, and this is probably where we're headed in that whole profession, where there will be very capable psychologists who will then refer when medication is needed, the person to a psychiatrist, and they'll become prescription writers. We have a crisis that's growing. It contributes to mental illness. It contributes to homelessness. And again, here at the train station, we get to see more homeless than we otherwise would. And that's a good thing. It reminds us of the problem that we have in this country. It is 7:08. We're going to come back with the weather and a couple of top stories. And we're going to talk with a gentleman who's now a political operative. We don't always have to agree with him. An old radio colleague of mine, Jovan Richards. We're going to chat with him for a moment. But first, we do need to do a little weather. Actually, it's just a sneak look at the headlines because we gave the weather. We're a little off time today, about 12 minutes ago. We'll come back and do that just before we talk with Vince Russo at 7:20. Take a seat in the seat of honor or that one, whichever you prefer, young man. All righty, as you know, the top stories today. We have an impeachment trial that is beginning. The manager of the Mets is history. No surprise there. Oh, actually, it was a surprise. It looked like they were going to stick to their guns. But what's interesting are the people, Jovan, who are being rumored to take his spot. Of course, the big name out there, although others are talking. Houston's talking to the guy. Boston's talking to the guy. All of a sudden, Buck Showalter, he's like a model. He's like a Victoria's Secret model. Everybody wants this man. He doesn't have nice legs, but he's got good baseball chops. Buck Showalter. Some of the other names: Hensley Mullins, Eduardo Perez, Tim Bogart, Tony DeFrancesco. How do they fit the name in the back of a uniform? Luis Rojas, Buck Showalter, again, Joe McEwing, and Kevin Long. So now you know. The president freed up $8 billion to go to Puerto Rico. Good for him. Goldman Sachs has been fined $1 billion for cheating. Sounds like baseball. Sounds like car dealers, and I know I'm killing myself. I need sponsors. So most car dealerships who hear this are not going to want me. You can adjust your volume there. Are not going to want me, except if they want to be called, we're an honest car dealership, and I'm going to put that label on them. But that's hard to find. Man, buying a car is like one of the worst things you could do. The dentist, going to the dentist and having a root canal is a more pleasant experience than buying a car. It all depends. I don't know. That's how I feel about it. One of the problems with Honest Radio is you won't get every sponsor you want. Please join me, an old friend, a broadcaster in his own right, but now he's a political operative. We need to paint him with that brush. And he has a pin on, I love Warren. What in God's name are you doing here at the train station?
I'm actually collecting signatures for Elizabeth Warren to get her on the ballot
But isn't she already on the ballot in New York?
No, I mean,
how is she not on the ballot? This is the layup for her.
Well, this is petitioning.
All she has to do is show up.
No one's on the ballot yet. No one is qualified to make the ballot. We have until Monday to obtain 5,000 signatures statewide. But on each ballot, there's a number of delegates that she would get to send to the DNC. I'm on the slate for Elizabeth Warren for the 16th congressional district, so I'm also going to be on the ballot coming up.
What are you going to be on the ballot for?
Well, I'm going to be on the ballot as one of her delegates.
Oh, so you get to go to the convention?
Yes.
You can call in from the convention for us if you're elected.
I'll be there regardless.
Vote for you. Where do I sign up to get you on the ballot?
I have the paperwork.
Get it. I'll sign it right now because
Are you a registered Democrat though?
Yes, I am, but
okay.
I don't know. I think I changed as an independent, but I think I am.
Well, then you can't sign. It has to be a registered Democrat.
Okay, geez, Although lately, with the way our city is turning so far left, I've been kidding a lot, and actually half serious that I may want to run for office. Sometimes I think I'd run as a Republican. You know why?
Originally,
you know why?
you would have been a great candidate for District 1, but we just got Martha Lopez.
No, I was thinking of the candidate that you helped get into the county legislature. I like that money and I like the influence. $75K.
Now it's $75K.
It's a lot. It's a nice job for a day a week, but. The problem that I have, and I have always been, just full disclosure, I've always been an admirer of the current mayor here, one of the most brilliant people I've ever met. However, what I don't like is when a city is so democratic, there's just too much, the wave goes one way.
Oh, of course.
Although it's changing now, I think, with some of the newer members. But, we've got a couple of people on city council. I'm not going to keep mentioning that. Well, yes, I can. They're both from the North End. Who between them, said the new one, Sarah Kay, has yet to say a word on the air anywhere. And so it makes me wonder, are you just going to do anything that the mayor wants? Because I can't respect that, even though I understand it's politics. And then you have Liz Freed, same thing. I mean, I don't know what they stand for. I don't know. Now, Liz I haven't invited on a lot, but I've invited Sarah on so many times. It's like my love life. I know is what I get.
Oh, jeez. Well, I can vouch for both are.
Well, of course, you wear their uniform.
It's not that I just wear the uniform. I actually have had numerous conversations with Sarah Kay.
I know she's a smart. I know they're both very smart women.
She's capable. And you know what? They're just really good people. And
but they may be wonderful people. But do they have an opinion, or do they call the mayor first to find out what it is?
Sarah Kay.
That's just a question. It's not an indictment.
Has always had an opinion. I've disagreed with Sarah Kay on numerous times.
Well, then I feel good about it.
Liz Freed, the same thing, But that also doesn't mean that myself, I'm a true blue Democrat, right here from the Queen City on the Sound, and I disagree with the mayor from time to time.
Okay,
that's
good.
What we're supposed to do.
That's what I like.
No
good.
Democrat has ever. I've never met a Democrat who I've agreed everything on. Even the one I'm currently pushing for now, I disagree with on something.
Miss Warren.
Exactly.
Okay.
So I'm not.
Excuse me.
I'm not like the biggest. Oh, this Democrat is the best thing since sliced bread. I mean, Yadira Ramos comes close, but that's only because I've worked for her. She's amazing.
No, that's okay. But well, first of all, I got to check my registration. I think I have the card in my. But I will write in for you. Why?
Actually,
because
you know what? I will do it for you right now.
Don't go checking me out on the web.
No.
For God's sakes.
There's an actual app
where you can tell who's registered. Because I registered so many years ago. Because my behavior is independent, but the truth is the truth. So I didn't know you had an app. So I can find out who's a registered Democrat and who's not.
So you actually are a registered Democrat.
So you can give me.
Unfortunately, I'm going to show it to you. It's going to show your age.
Yeah. Now, actually,
I actually know his real age now, folks.
No, I don't hide my age. 69.
Yes.
Okay,
but let's talk about your voting record. No, that's horrible.
But wait, I'm going to. You even know my voting? You're not supposed to know my voting record.
I don't know who you voted for. I know if you voted, and it's not been very good.
It's been there were certain elections I didn't vote in and said I wouldn't. Because otherwise it would have hurt me on the air.
Yes, of course.
All right. Now, I'm gonna out myself. I am going to be 70 in March, and my goal, I'm still playing hockey.
Yeah.
Is to limp crawl so that I can get the 7-0. Although I'm still capable, but
I mean, you've always played hockey. As long as I've known you, play hockey.
Yeah, I've been playing for 50 years on and off. I'm still pretty decent, but it's getting harder, and there are other things I want to do. I have a lot of writing I want to do, and hockey gets in the way of it. I want to build this radio station, and it's.
I know. I'm trying to help you.
But
it's
anyway,
exciting.
But as far as you go, you see, people need to know this. I've always had a high regard for you since you were in high school.
I don't understand why.
No, I always have. You're a smart guy. You're a decent guy. In fact, he's going to be joining our lineup of talk show hosts, so you can beat up a Democrat on a regular basis.
I know Vincent Malfitano is probably listening to this and saying, "Thank God."
Well, I have somebody to beat up. But I have most of my callers are to the right, and a lot of them, some of them are brilliant. They know one of our callers, Anthony Galetta, does so much research before he calls.
Yeah, I get it on Facebook.
I wind up doing, I've always referred to him. He's become a good friend over the years.
Of course.
And we try to use ourselves as a poster children for you don't have to agree to get along.
Yeah, of course.
And when he calls, I feel like you do on the turnpike. When you see when a police car lights up, and puts on the whaler. So what did I say now? But I've enjoyed that. I've enjoyed Vince calls. Tom from Pelham is a real smart Republican.
Listen, I get a lot of these guys on Facebook already, so
having to take them,
having to take them to town.
Why do you guys do that? I kid Latimer all the time. Why does he engage this stuff? I
can't answer that question, and it baffles me as an operative to see someone like George fight back. But at the same time...
Oh, no, he likes it. He says it right here on these mics.
At the same time, I respect it. Because he's not going to sit here and BS you and tell you that he's not going to fight back. If he believes something so strongly and you're going to do everything you can to fight against him, I commend the man for saying, you know what? Not today, not here, not now, not ever. If you want to debate me, debate me. But we're gonna have these conversations.
Oh, well, that's a good thing.
So, I support it. I mean, at first I was like, why is George doing this? Someone steal his phone.
No, and he tells me, no. I told George, stop. And another thing, because, he, to his credit, and I kid him about this on the air and off, he refuses to get the classic entourage and driver. And he be a lot easier. I think he uses it sometimes to get around when he has 10 different meetings, but he has to. But...
George,
by the way,
you gotta remember, George grew up south side Mount Vernon.
Yeah, he's a street guy, and he likes to flaunt that. Now, for me, and talk about a revelation, since you seem to get me in that mood today, I consider the finest councilman we've had in the last 10 years to be Al Tarantino, and he's a dyed-in-the-wool Republican. So
I like Al. He's a very business savvy type of guy.
He's a moderate.
I'm glad to see him back on the council. I mean, there was a short time he did not run, and then he ran again.
You're going back now 14 years ago when he lost by 8 votes.
Yes. And then I'm glad to see that
he's been terrific, and he's been a great moderator, because if all we have is Democrats, then we become, for example, do you know the 2 people I don't get on the phone who do not call in, the 2 public figures?
From Rochelle?
No, because they know they don't have to. Tom Roach and and what's his name, Fredo. I call him Fredo, the mayor of Yonkers.
Oh,
Mike Spano. They don't have to. They're Papa Doc. They're president for life. Now Roach does a good job. I think Spano does a pretty decent job too. But it's fun. In fact, I even had his brother call me. He called me on it. Why do you call me the Godfather and my brother Fredo? I said, because the phrase fits. But
I mean, he's won his 3rd term.
No, he finagled getting a 3rd term.
You can't listen. The city council.
He didn't go for a referendum, did he?
City council
he didn't
really
go for a referendum.
City council could have voted down. Also, there could have been a referendum.
And look at the.
But let's be honest.
He got a referendum.
Look at his election rate. Look at his election rate, and tell me a referendum wouldn't have just said exactly what would have happened.
I don't know. Because even here in New Rochelle, the mayor, who does have a lot of power, loves the idea of a strong mayor.
Does he?
Yeah.
Does he? I love Nome.
He has
I respect Nome.
He has a considerable amount of power. But now here's the corollary. If he doesn't, he sure gets blamed for a lot.
Yep, that's true.
But given that,
Somewhere Denise Ward is saying blame the mayor for this. And
no, that's her right. And then sometimes she calls this show, although I'm sure
I love Denise Ward, by the way.
My old employers probably tell her don't do that again, which I understand. It's competitive business.
I'm sure I'm going to get a phone call after this.
So you still work there?
No.
Oh, okay. So, and again, I don't badmouth them on the air. I loved my time there.
As do I.
Because I think a lot of people,
the employees over there have taught me everything.
They expect me. Well, one of the more better-looking employees taught you a lot too. That
guy,
Bob Marrone.
Yes, that Bob Marrone guy was a character, but
teacher
he was.
Their commitment to, which is where I learned it, to local broadcasting and to local issues and freedom of speech. I've always said it. I was never told, although I pissed them off, as you would any boss from time to time. I was never told what to say on the air. Never. Only once did I anger my boss, and that was because I made fun. Well, I've angered him many times, but over what I said on the air.
Yeah.
Was I made fun, and I will continue to for the rest of my life, of Jack Welch and his wife. And it came up. It's actually a pretty good story. But say hello to a friend of the radio station. I don't know if he knows you. He's on the phone right now. Vince Russo. Good morning, Vince.
Good morning, Bob.
We're having some fun here. Did you ever meet Joe Vaughn in your travels?
No, I don't believe so.
A guy who interned. He's a political operative now, but he's a broadcaster as well, and he was a guy I actually taught. He interned under me and made fun of me because back in the day I was in love with Robin Meade, and it was the first thing I told him in the morning he had to do was put her show on.
You couldn't start the show without
No,
Robin
but
Meade
you
on
said
the
it during a
television.
speech at the high school when you were explaining what it's like to do
man,
the radio.
I have to
he
explain.
outed me, Vince.
I had to explain properly the method of your madness. And if Robin Meade was your muse, you best believe it was on the television.
Well, one of the televisions. I needed a
one.
national station. She hasn't aged well. Anyway, so I digress. But anyway, I was telling him the story of the one time I got in trouble, and I'm actually giving a tribute to my old radio station. Speaking of the devil, I was just talking about you. I don't know if you heard that. Take a seat. Come in, say hi. So here's one time I got in trouble, and Anthony Galetta just stopped by. Who knew? How are you? You look better. You look like you're feeling better.
We're getting there.
Well, that's a good thing. Anyway, so here's the one time I got in trouble. It was when, the woman who married the 85-year-old guy, gorgeous woman. Mm-hmm. Come on, Robert. You'll know this, Anthony. You love beautiful women.
You graduated with them.
Bob, Anna Nicole Smith.
Yeah, thank you. When Anna Nicole Smith died,
Tragic.
and she was famous for having married an 85-year-old guy, and people were throwing her under the bus. I said, wait. I said, who's worse, Anna Nicole or Susie Wetlaufer? So they said, who's Susie Wetlaufer? And at the time, Susie Wetlaufer was a 40-year-old. She was the editor of the Harvard Business Review, the most august, the most journalistic integrity magazine on the planet, the Harvard Business Review.
Yeah.
She goes out to interview Jack Welch. She finally scores an interview with him. And on that night, sleeps with him. He leaves his wife for her. She gets rich and pretends to be, important. Who is a bigger slime ball, okay? A gorgeous girl who comes from trailer trash, who gets a break, matters, an 85-year-old guy. He wants the sweet thing, and she wants the sweet Benjamins. Or Susie Wetlaufer. There's not compared. So I think it was actually Lorraine Carr who called out. This so many years ago and says, but Bob, maybe he's handsome. I said, did you ever see Jack Welch? He looks like the bird that your cat dropped at the front. My boss went nuts. I didn't know he was his friend.
Come on, he was always friends with everyone.
No, but
tell me you got a better Cuomo lesson from anyone else other than me.
I got to interview Cuomo a few times.
Your story started on the wrong premise.
What?
You said she was famous for marrying an 85. He was famous for marrying her.
Well, yes, that's right. That's very true. Anyway, it's good to see you, Anthony. We were just talking about you in the context of
I heard it coming down.
How well you
and when I
prepared
heard
for
Javon on, I had to stop by. I didn't have plans to stop by.
Say hello to the miserable twerp.
Although we could not be more
far left, miserable communist.
Okay,
That far left.
it's one of the few Facebook pages I enjoy getting in debates on because although everybody can be snarky at times, for the most part, it's actual honest debate.
Well, yes. Well, you're famous for that. But I was just telling him how when
No, you should see me and Lou Young go at it.
Is that right? You go
Oh, big time. And you want to talk about getting his snark up?
You get your snark up?
He's a big Bloomberg supporter like you. So when
Yeah.
I told him that he got a whole 45 supporters at the Judge Judy announcement.
I heard about
Yeah.
that.
You know, he's paying his top staff about $15,000 a month.
Whoa.
And you
Put me on that payroll, baby.
And you also know he's paying people $10,000 if they pledge to vote against Donald Trump.
I'm rich.
I do. I mean, I've thought about it myself.
Hey, have at him. He's got an I Love Elizabeth button on. Look at that.
I do, collecting signatures and everything.
How's she going to pay for all that health care?
2 cents.
2 cents.
2 cents.
What's 2 cents?
So you haven't heard? You haven't heard the 2 cent plan? No. I know you're a caller, so I'll be very quick.
I know. I got. Well, Vince is listening in. We're going to talk with him anyway. This is too good.
Elizabeth Warren has this wealth tax that she's been proposing for quite a number of years, and it's 2 cents on the dollar after you finish making $50 million. So you get to keep all the money.
Vince, we want you to join. Listen to this, Vince.
All the money. You get to keep all the money up until $50 million,
Yeah.
and then once you start making $50 million
How
and
much you going to
$1,
take from these people?
it's 2 cents on every dollar.
Oh,
So
just 2 cents?
Like the way they say 2 cents. They can't say it's 2%.
Right.
They say it's 2 cents.
2 cents. What?
I mean, instead of making $1, you make 98
Hold on. Let's
cents.
get Vince. This was his segment, buddy.
No,
But-
you're absolutely right.
Vince,
But
what do you think of all this, Vince?
I think Elizabeth Warren is a raving lunatic.
Well,
Whoa.
there's at least 2 out of 4 here.
Jeez.
Vince
That
and I
was
could not agree more.
I wouldn't vote for her either. There was a time before she went off the deep end where she had policies and stuff, and then
She has a plan for everything, man. This woman
Yeah,
is come prepared.
her plan is to spend as much as she possibly can and tax as much as she possibly can. All of these pie in the sky things: free health care, free education, do away with all student debt,
Necessary.
House all of these illegals. I mean, forget it. I mean, where's she going to get all this money?
By the way, she wants you to take in the
Vince, it's
illegals.
coming out of your pocket. You're the town supervisor.
That's right.
Unless
Whatever he
Vince
is.
makes
He's a
50
Republican
million
operative.
and $1, it's really
great.
not.
I'm stirring the pot.
really not.
I can't wait to
Attack!
tax all of these rich people, and then when they all leave and take their businesses with them, then people are going to see what
Are you
it's
kidding?
like to
Trump's
live on
giving
They're
me
not going
10 for
anywhere.
my vote and
They're not
15 a
going
month
anywhere.
to work for him.
They're
There
not
goes my
going-
radio.
You
These
keep
businesses
challenging.
aren't going
Well,
anywhere.
let's understand something. Republicans are not like Democrats. If a Republican said they were going to leave the country if so and so was elected, they would have been out of here.
Doubtful.
Oh, God,
Doubtful.
this is great. I'm so glad you both walked in. So what do you think, Vince? This, by the way, if Anthony likes him, it tells you he is a lovely man, Jovan. He really
Absolutely,
is.
absolutely.
We've had so much fun over the years. In fact, on my Facebook page, there's a picture of me. Do you remember when you sprayed me with slime?
I do. But do you remember why I sprayed you with slime? It was payback.
What did I do? What?
You caught me sleeping.
Oh, yeah, I did catch you sleeping. The only thing, do you remember when I edited a speech for you?
I do.
You don't want me to go there.
It did improve your looks, though.
No, what happened was
Green is your color.
No, it is. I feel
Whether
that-
you're barfing or what.
No, well, he's really become a really good political guy, and I've grown to admire that in you. But he was, and I used to be a speechwriter, so he ran his speech by me, and the speech was great, except at one point. Now, I'll put this elegantly because I don't believe in fat shaming or anything of that.
jeez.
But my friend Jovan is a man of sizable
Personality.
presence, yes, and he wrote in there, I can't tell you how big I am about this. And I said, I think you better take that out. Remember that?
I do.
But you are.
But I kept it in.
But look, you did keep it in?
Yeah.
Did they laugh?
It was a funny line.
It was a
good-
funny line. But
it
not
picked
as
up
funny.
really
Vince,
well.
this guy.
And if you can't laugh at yourself,
Oh, you know
might
I
as
do.
well. I'm just saying, I'm talking about in general.
Yeah.
I'm not talking about anybody here. because I've been 325 pounds.
Well-
and I've made fun of myself. So if you can't make fun of yourself, just dig a
You
hole
should
in
have
the
seen him
backyard
then. He'd
and
come in
bury
here and
yourself.
take out both seats.
Absolutely.
No, but you know what? He got me good, though.
Krispy Kreme used to shut down, lock the door when they saw me coming.
Anthony went on a salad diet. That's why the rainforest died.
Wow.
No, but Vince, he had to give
Yeah.
a speech at school about how he learned the radio. And he said, when you are working for Bob in the morning show, the first thing you have to do is put on Robin Mead.
You have to.
And you put up a picture of her.
Of course,
And the
I had
sign-
to. I had to tell people. I had to get them to visibly understand the circumstances as to what is or was your muse at the given time.
She was. Then it became...
Kate Upton.
Yeah, pretty much so. I hate you. So by the way, last night he and I were having one of our little debates over texting. And then I thought, I can't get into it. Sometimes he sends me, shall we say, enjoyable pictures to look at. And I saw the thing, Tumblr, and I said, oh boy. I opened it up, and it was like, did you get my thing? That was me. That was me. He got even with
As
me.
Jovan says, that's payback.
That was a good payback. Hey,
like
listen,
that.
I got to talk with Vince. Thank you.
You got it.
Thank
And,
you,
and
thank
I
you.
will sign to get you.
Awesome, I
I will
appreciate it.
sign to get you on that
I will,
ballot.
as you're talking to
Anthony,
Vince,
thanks for stopping by.
I
We'll
will
talk
have
with you later.
sign.
And I can't wait for 8 o'clock because Jake's in the house. He's got his picks ready. Take care. Don't forget to listen in at 8 o'clock when Jake comes in. Thank you so much, gentlemen. So, Vince, we're having fun today. What do you think? What do you think of the Mets getting rid of the lapdog?
I think they had no choice. You know, I mean, he was named as an indicted co-conspirator in the thing by MLB, and you know they had no choice but to do it. I think that they should vacate the Astros World Series win. I think they should declare that there was no winner that year, and you know, just take it off the books.
Well, everybody I talk to is saying that. And you know what kind of convinced me of it? By the way, I'm signing up so Jovan can be at the convention.
I'll do the rest.
Yeah, dude, look at it. He's going to do the rest for me. And then a corrupt politician. I'm talking with one, and I got another one in the studio. Sorry, I come in a good mood today. All right, so anyway. Yeah, well, you know what did it? And we're going to be talking with Jake about this at 8 o'clock as well, Vince. And that is, and Steve Callis a little later. And I was reading an account of when they beat the Dodgers. And Kershaw, the greatest pitcher in baseball at the time, he's probably third or fourth now, but how he got rocked every inning. And then how Yu Darvish's career almost got destroyed because they actually reviewed the tape and you could hear before every pitch the banging on that can.
Yeah.
And when I read that, I said, the people with your opinion, and I can't wait, and I don't want him to out himself now. No, you could leave it there. He's going to pick it up later. And I don't want Jake to tell us now because I want people to wait for the 8 o'clock hour with bated breath. But what I want him to think about now is, will that be his opinion at 8 o'clock? Should Jake reverse those? Now, you think they should. You think they should give the pennant to the Yankees? But see, the problem with the Yankee thing is it still doesn't mean they would have won the World Series. But certainly in the Dodger case, that they could reverse that.
Yeah, well, I think that they should just, as I say, you know, take the World Series championship away from them, and you'll have no winner that year, and you know, move forward. But
no, I think
you know,
they
there's
should
so
give
much
it to the
cheating.
Dodgers.
There's so much cheating in every sport. I'm sure. I mean, it's
Did you hear the story?
especially with modern technology. You know, now it's so easy. You know, one of the reasons why players, you know, when they go to the mound and they're talking to the pitcher and all that, and they cover their mouth with the glove, was originally teams used to get lip readers, and
Yeah, I
they
know.
used to be able to see what they were talking about. Now with electronics and different surveillance methods, it's so hard to not be able to.
Yeah,
utilize
there
those
even
to
is a
advantage.
special mic. I think it's called a parabolic mic where you can listen into something across the way. Did you hear the story we did today about Goldman Sachs?
No.
Okay. Now get this. They're going to pay a $1 billion fine. $1.1 billion, folks. That's $1,100 million fine because they were involved with Deutsche Bank and others to launder money. And why should anyone trust a financial services firm?
Goldman Sachs has been one of the biggest crooks going. I mean, they were responsible for the, for the meltdown that we had.
Well, one of them
just before Obama became president.
And they were part of it, but just. And I was talking before, and you worked for that firm as well. Do you remember that list of principles we used to have on the wall that was once true, and towards the end of Merrill's life, you'd laugh at it?
Yeah.
Remember the one, integrity? Customer
and
focus?
By the way, all those people that were running the financial the financial offices in the government were all Goldman Sachs ex-officials.
Yeah, I know.
So they were all making regulations and all that to benefit Goldman Sachs. It was pathetic.
Well, but in this case, I was talking about Merrill and their signs on the door.
Well, I understand, but
responsible citizenship meant you had to give to the United Way campaign, not their money. Do you know
that was another shakedown, that United Way thing at Merrill. I mean, our boss would call us in and say, management expects 100%. Well, who the hell are you telling me who I have to give charitable money to? Plus, United Way were the biggest crooks going too.
Well, you know what? I changed that. I ran that for a while, and I made it where you could designate your charity, and then we went to the charity to be sure that they got the money, and that helped for a while. But in general, do you know what I never did? I never gave blood at the Merrill Lynch blood drive. Because I already worked my ass off for them. I wasn't going to give blood, too. If I was going to give blood, I was going to do it on the side on my own, really. You know how I feel about them by the time I left. It was a great firm when I joined them, though, and they really did believe in that stuff. But then the capital markets, they're called institutional people, and some of them are on the way to work now, and they know I tell the truth. They have about as much consideration for their fellow man as a mongoose has for a snake. And but that's okay. You need that. You need that for the value of things to stay what they are. You need them to be hungry to make money and to buy things and sell them at a profit. They just shouldn't be allowed out in polite society. It's like stomach acid. You need it to digest food, So what do you think about the impeachment, and what do you think about the fact that some of these Republicans may finally say we want witnesses?
Well, it's about time. An impeachment really is an indictment.
That's all it is.
That the Congress says that there is probable cause that a crime was committed, and they are binding over the president for trial in the Senate. And the Senate conducts a trial and sees if there is enough evidence to convict him of the crime that he's being charged with. Imagine a murder trial over there in Westchester County where the grand jury indicts an individual, and all they have to prove is that there was probable cause to believe that the person committed a crime. So the case then goes to court for trial. Right. Imagine where the defense says, wait a minute, you can't call any other witnesses, you can't present any other evidence other than what you presented at the indictment.
Well, yeah.
It doesn't make any sense.
Well, and also, imagine if the jury said, they didn't get here yet, but we're going to acquit them when they do.
Right.
But in that way, both sides are playing politics, because what the Founding Fathers wanted was for a crime to be so egregious that even the party of the principal in trouble would agree. And they obviously don't, but they should still play it out. But for political reasons, they don't want to. They want to act. I mean, if the president uses the word hoax one more time, I think what every Democrat running against him should say, the only hoax is him. He's got to stop calling things a hoax. I mean, I don't understand why people buy it.
But it works.
Unless it does work, unless they don't want the democracy as we know it.
Yeah, it works. Denying everything, calling everything hoax, calling everything fake news, saying that the press is all against him and it's a big conspiracy. It works.
I had a senior moment earlier, and I need your help with it. The guy that came from, he used to run Breitbart, and then he was in the White House, and then he left.
Banyan.
Yeah, Banyan. I forgot. He was in Paris the other day, and he was trying to explain what the president has to do to get reelected. He said, look, it's not about the impeachment. It's not about immigrants. It's not about, he named a number of different things. He said it's about attacking the press. They're the only enemy he has. He has to lay out his own narrative and keep plugging it. And he's done that very well.
Yeah, well, he's going to keep saying that anything that's said about him is all lies, and people will buy it. I mean, my colleagues here in my little borough, I spoke to a guy the other day, and he was saying, this impeachment, blah, blah, blah. And I said, well, he actually did do it. He actually did try and shake down Ukraine.
Well, he did, yes.
No, he didn't. No, he didn't. He didn't do it. Biden's the crook there.
Well, that's like one day when people were fighting for Obamacare. There was a guy in the drugstore, right over CVS, right over here in North Avenue. And a guy got his bill. And evidently he didn't like the price of the drugs. He goes, that's the Obamacare right now. He better not take my Medicare away. I said, no plans to take your Medicare away. It's like,
well, my wife was on some Facebook thing or other, and a guy was saying, he says, this Obamacare, we got to get rid of this Obamacare. We got to get rid of this Obamacare. And then he said he was on, what the hell was it? It was some state thing, and he's going, people said, well, what do you have? He said, well, I have, the Alabama care or whatever it is. And they're going, but that's Obamacare.
And what did he say?
That's what you have.
And what did he say?
No, it's different. It's not different. That's what it is.
Vince, it has the name of a tan man on it. That's what the guy didn't like about it. Do you know there's some group, and I forget where they are, that is trying to sue, I forget who they are, CNN or somebody, to come out and admit that Michelle Obama is transgender. I told you about the time I was at a hockey game and a bunch of housewives from Staten Island asked me if it's true that she was a man. I
know. It's ridiculous.
Look, I got to go because I'm getting myself aggravated when I talk about this. But
what else is new?
I always welcome. No, I'm telling you, I read this thing with Banyan the other day. I didn't sleep because it's so dangerous to our democracy. But it works. You said it right. All right, I'll talk to you later. Vince Russo, everybody.
See you next week.
The man of everything. He knows so much stuff. All right, I got to get, I missed Janelle, and I got to get Janelle. Janelle. Come on, get up there. There we go. I love this new phone system. This is Radio Westchester 742, running a little bit late, but we still are getting stuff done, and I like that. I don't know if it's a caller. Guess they're not picking up. We'll try it again in a little bit. We are going to open up the telephones. No, it's not. Let's see if we can possibly get them. We're going to try. No answer. We're going to try one more time. Where am I? Oh, when do we get a call screen? It's all going to be better. All right. Ringing. All righty. Coming up in just a few minutes, we're going to talk with Steve Callis. We've not heard from Janelle Albritton yet. I assumed that was her calling in on the other line. But let's do a reset here. We do have to go to the weather, and we know you want to hear that. It's 22, but it's not going to get much warmer. It's going to get up to 29 today. The good news is it's sunny, although rather breezy. Highs around 28 degrees today. But the real story is tomorrow, so listen up, please. Now, after tonight, it's going to be clear to start with clouds building. Lows around 15, and the wind will be lighter, but still feel like 5 to 10 degrees. So dress warmly if you're going out tonight. And I've just locked in our caller. We'll be with you in a moment. But tomorrow's the day you got to be wary about. Cloudy during the morning with our first snowflakes arriving between 11 a.m. and 2 p.m. Snow will be moderate to heavy at times once it arrives and through early evening. Roads will be icy and snow-covered during the afternoon. Now, here's the catch. Most of the problem, 5 inches, 2 inches, 3 inches, is going to be north of 287. You're not going to see many accumulations along the shore, here in the Sound Shore, anywhere where you're near the water, so don't worry too much about it. And even if you get it, it should melt by morning. Now, Saturday night, cloudy with any lingering mix of rain showers ending, mainly before midnight. Temperatures will hold fairly steady in the mid to upper 30s, so the snow should melt. And on Sunday, partly sunny, breezy, and chilly, highs around 37 degrees. All righty. The weather's been brought to you exclusively by United Hebrew of New Rochelle, voted one of America's best rehab and senior care campuses, and it's right here in New Rochelle. Visit uhgc.com. And we go to our next guest. We're running a little late today, but we'll still keep her with us. We have a little cushion around 8 o'clock, so we'll get everything in. Please welcome Janelle Albritton. She is the managing editor and publisher of the Westchester County Post.com. Good morning.
Man, I'm sorry. It's Steve Callis.
Steve, it's your boss didn't go. Maybe she did, and I missed her. Well, I'm glad you called early.
Want me to hang up?
No, if she should call back, though, I'll tell you to hang up and we'll defer to her because she is the boss. And
of course.
You know, you got to work for her, and I don't want to give you any issues because we both love the woman. All righty. But we are going to turn on. We always, whenever you come on, we put on our local sports guru on. And that, of course, is the inimitable. And you can be with us when we do our Jake's Picks of the Week as well. Jake Schaefer, your mic is on. And I wanted to wait for your opinion until now. But first, let's start. Go right to the top. Are you surprised that the Mets let their manager go?
No, if that's for me?
Yes.
No, I'm not surprised. Unfortunately for Carlos Beltran, he went from player in the scandal where no player is going to be touched because, I guess, of the Players Association.
Yeah.
Right to management. And, you know, everybody's going to look bad there. So I'm not surprised. Was that a firing, or I saw on SNY mutually agreed to part ways? Which maybe is different from firing. I don't know. But I'm not surprised, no.
It was a mutually agreed to part ways. What about you, Jake?
No, I knew he would not be the manager for the Mets. There was too much of an avalanche growing.
You were pretty sure. Were you sure from the beginning or when you saw the avalanche growing?
I was. You asked me a couple days ago, and I said he was not going to be the manager. I have to say that yesterday was the most fun I've ever had on Twitter. I was just flipping around on Twitter, and I saw a tweet from someone saying it was Carlos Beltran's niece, and she announced that Beltran was fired, and this hadn't been announced by anyone yet. So then a couple minutes later, it was official. Beltran's gone. So this person has credibility. They were the one that broke the story. So so then she tweets again. She says, "I can't sit for this any longer. My uncle, I'm going to stick up for him. Altuve and Bregman have been wearing buzzers all season."
What?
Did you hear about this story, Steve?
I heard about it, yeah.
Has it been verified?
Then someone comes out and said that's not Carlos Beltran's niece, but it's someone with credibility. They broke the story of Beltran being fired. So
but that's on Twitter. Has it reached the mainstream press yet?
She was the first one to break the story, or supposedly Beltran's niece. Mm-hmm. So this person has credibility, so it's assumed that this person is with the Astros as a player, an ex-Astros player, just made up a fake account and claimed to be Beltran's niece. So then I saw a great video of the Altuve home run off of Chapman that we've all seen. You've spoken about it at length. And as I saw the video, you see Altuve coming close to third base, and he looks over to his dugout. He slows down, and he looks at his dugout, and he motions to them, "Do not rip my jersey off," because it is a custom now that when players hit a game-winning hit, the players storm on the field and rip off the jersey. But Altuve slows down and motions to the dugout, "Do not rip my jersey off." Obviously, there's something he doesn't want to be seen underneath his jersey. So that was a great day on Twitter. I really enjoyed the...
Wow. What do you make of that, Steve? How much credibility do you give that?
Well, I know what he's talking about in terms of not wanting... Because I think, Jake, in a prior game, he had gotten his jersey ripped off.
Yes.
And that happened once, and I don't know if he said he was uncomfortable with that happening or whatever. It does seem, like when there's smoke, there's fire, and with respect to the buzzers and the wires, and they said that Bregman did it as well. If that's true, I don't know how those guys aren't suspended for at least a year. But again, everything I've heard says MLB doesn't want to go against the players' union, the most powerful union on the planet. But I think that's a travesty of justice if none of these players get something. But it looks like right now that's the way it's going to be. And I think the Mets were obviously intelligent because of the avalanche, your word, to part ways, mutually part ways. The Mets were intelligent to mutually part ways with Beltran.
As a guy who covers politics for a living, it would have been interesting if these gentlemen just called it all a hoax. We know a very powerful man that does that every day.
That might be coming today. You don't know.
Now, what about, Stephen, what about Boston? Is this over in Boston? I mean, who else knew in Boston what Cora was doing?
Well, you have to think there was more. I mean, if Cora really is the linchpin, and apparently the MLB report says, who's the common denominator in Houston and Boston? It is Cora, and they won back-to-back World Series, Houston and Boston. So I think there has to be more people who knew. The question to me, based on what's happened so far, is only, well, did the coach know? Did the GM know? That kind of thing. Even the GM of the Astros, Luhnow, said, I really didn't know anything was happening, but, it's my responsibility or something. So he didn't own up to anything.
I know nothing.
Right. No, that's exactly right. But he got fired anyway. And I think there has to be more than Boston. It's amazing to me that this was kept under wraps so long. If fears the pitcher, he's the one who
I wonder
said
why
what
he
happened.
did that, because you've played on sports teams, Stephen, and I neglected to reset you because of the way I brought you on, and I'll do that in a second. But you've played on sports teams. That kind of keep things in the clubhouse is a very powerful thing.
Yeah, but I think it might be until you're traded or you're released or you're upset about something that happened. I'm guessing that's the background because he had been traded. I'm guessing
I'm
that's
expecting
the background.
The next step to be a lot more whistleblowers. I think that'll be the next step in this scandal.
Well, I think you're right, Jake, especially if the players aren't going to get punished.
Well, I think that still remains to be seen. And again, folks, we brought him on, and I was so anxious to get into the issues. I neglected to tell you, Steve Callis is a longtime broadcaster, sports writer, sports commentator. He is the sports editor at the Westchester County Post.com. He not blogs, excuse me, although I'm sure he does. He is on several podcasts. He's been with ESPN Radio, and his most recent piece, which has received some nice reviews, is on the WestchesterCounty.com outlet about Roberto Clemente. So he knows of whence he speaks, and we have a lot of fun with him. Now, the bigger question, gentlemen, and with Steve, you first, because you're our guest, and then we'll, when Jake takes over, you can comment on his picks. I can't wait for them. The bigger question is, should those titles, particularly the one against the Dodgers, because of they're starting to look at films now of when Kershaw and Yu Darvish were pitching. They got hammered, and you could hear the can being banged. Should they give that World Series to the Dodgers?
Well, I don't know. That would kind of change the history of sports. Although I guess you could tell me they do it in the NCAA with those college basketball with all the people who had hired agents. They vacate the title. I don't know if they can go that far. It just seems to me that you have to put, Major League Baseball has to put a lot more into prevention rather than finding this stuff out after the fact. You think they're the only two teams, last year's Red Sox and the year before Astros, 17 and 18, you think they're the only two that are doing something like this? I find it hard to believe, but if they are, it seems to me MLB still has to do something, some kind of technology prevention, if you will, in every ballpark in the country, because I don't, it leaves such a bad taste in my mouth, and thankfully my kids are older now, but imagine you have a crazy baseball fan, fill in the blank, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16 years old. If you're not cheating, you're not trying, that old adage.
Yeah.
So I think that's a bigger societal problem, frankly. Do I think they can take away a World Series? Maybe vacate it and nobody won, but I don't think you can take it away from A and give it to B. This is so blatant, and the Yankees lost to the Astros in 7 games the year they won the World Series. It's so blatant and so bad and sends such a terrible message. And we're not even talking about gambling on baseball games, which I certainly don't do. But think of the ramifications of that if someone had come out, I don't know, 1 or 2 days after this happened, for example. But I think it has to go to prevention as opposed to finding all this stuff out after the fact. It has to be proactive, not reactive.
Well, a couple of questions come to mind when you say that. The great bicyclist, what's his face? Help me out there, Jake.
Armstrong.
I always felt that the only reason they took everything away from him is that he was a miserable human being. But that sport, everybody did something. I don't think there wasn't a person riding a bike that wasn't juiced. But they took they took 7 titles away from him.
Yeah, but think what a joke that is if you're into that, or if you're a participant, worse. But then, of course, the guy who was the next guy was also a cheater, and it was apparently common knowledge that you just kind of took the stuff. Okay. Maybe you would analogize that, I assume, to PEDs in baseball.
Oh, I've changed on PEDs.
At the end, everybody. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I'm sorry. I stepped on you. Go ahead.
No, because when all is said and done, all the 102 guys who we still don't know who are on the list who failed the drug test.
Thank you.
But of course, people found out how to not fail the drug test and still do something. Yeah. So it's kind of like, you can go back to the East Germans years ago. The bad guys are usually one step or more ahead of the good guys. And I think in this kind of non-PED cheating, I still think there's probably other teams that are doing it.
Well, listen, I agree with you, but I'm going to share this with both of you.
The real question, I think, is if you're a pitcher, who would you rather face? A Barry Bonds in his enormous head, or a guy that knows what's coming? I would much rather face a steroid user.
Well, you might be right about that. But something I wanted to mention to both of you, and I want to suggest that you try. Now, of course, Jake will be back with us Monday, but for when you come back next week as well. Because this is something I found out in the last couple of days. I tried an experiment. I've talked to people who don't follow sports. Now, the three of us have played. We've played at some pretty high levels. We are into these things. We understand even the urge to cheat. I mean, I'm a 69-year-old hockey player. I clutch, I grab, I hook, and I know how to get away with it. But here's the point. Every non-baseball fan who hears this story, they think they should take the title away. Isn't that interesting?
Well, it is interesting, and
they still have a sense of justice about it.
Well, I think maybe they could vacate it. I don't think you can take it from A and give it to B. But it's kind of like, so I go back to the NCAA, when a team has their title taken away, everybody still thinks they won the title because they won the title. And I'm saying on the court, even though it's cheating wise, or you had in that case it was more usually they had an agent or something, but. Nobody really says, oh, yeah, they didn't win. It's vacated. Right. Boeheim lost all those wins, for example.
You're right.
Did he not win those games?
You're right. You're right. And
it's a very slippery slope, so I think they should, again, be proactive, not reactive, and do something earlier.
But you're very right. Ask anybody on the planet who the greatest bicyclist of all time is, and it's Armstrong. I don't care if he drank jet fuel. 7 wins in that grueling thing, whatever he was taking, I want to take some of it. Are you kidding? It's just the way the world is.
Right. Plus, if everyone was doing it, I guess he's the real winner anyway.
Yeah, he probably was. But you know what? Guess what it's time for? Yes, indeed, folks. And Steve stays with us through this when we talk football. But right now, all ears are on Abdullah himself, the Soothsayer. He's got his crystal ball. He has his money to put up, and we're talking, of course, about Jake's football picks of the week, and they're brought to you by Dominic's Fine Cigars, licensed retailer with a big selection, including Arturo Fuente, Padrones, and more. Dominic's Fine Cigars, located at 204 Boston Post Road. No, it's not. It's 2304. Boston Post Road in Larchmont. They're open 7 days, and we are seconds away. We have Jake Schaefer ready to make his picks and listening in to critique, to agree, to refute, or otherwise analyze the great Steve Callis, sportscaster, sports writer, blogger. All right, we're ready for you. And don't forget to get the wheel, because the wheel, we got to see if the wheel agrees with you. Let me get out my card. All right. Jake's picks of the week.
All right,
Let's start with the Chiefs.
I've been talking about this all week. I've been going with the New York Post line all season.
Did you see they changed the lines today?
For one of the
7
games.
and 7.5.
One of the games. I was hoping everything I've seen, it's 7.5 for both games. But the Post is sticking at 7.
Are we going to stick with the Post?
I will
Okay.
stick with the Post. I've gone with the Post. And it will affect one of my picks.
Let's go with the first game and the Chiefs game. And the Chiefs are playing the Titans.
The Chiefs are at home, favored by 7 against the upstart Tennessee Titans. Ryan Tannehill, comeback kid, comeback story. If the line went up to 7.5, I would have taken the Titans. But the half a point, I'm going to go with the Chiefs.
Okay, you're going to go with the Chiefs. Now, we want to be fair to you. If by Sunday it goes to 7.5, can we assume you'll change your pick?
Yes.
Okay, that's fair. That's fair. And we'll let you do that. How do you feel about his commitment, the willingness to change, or do you think he ought to make it ironclad now?
I think I like the Chiefs -7 or the Chiefs -7.5. If you want me to talk about the game, I got a few interesting things to say. But I understand what he's saying because that's kind of the magic number. But to me, what the Chiefs did to the Texans, and I understand the Texans' defense is not the Titans' defense, but to have 7 straight possessions and score 7 touchdowns, I don't think that's ever happened, certainly not in the playoffs. And look, Andy Reid is 1-8 against the Titans, so that's not a good thing. Andy Reid has been known to not be big in big games. There's a lot going against the Chiefs, and I know Jake knows that the Titans, maybe he said that, I wasn't sure. The Titans beat the Chiefs during the regular season this year, 35-32. But I still like the Chiefs. They're too explosive. The difference to me between the Chiefs and the Ravens is that the Ravens really aren't built to come back from a deficit, and they were down 14-0 and never could get back. Whereas the Chiefs are absolutely, and as you saw, they came back already from a 24-0 deficit.
Jake, what's your analysis of the game?
I agree. I think what I saw from the Chiefs last week was incredible. Of course, we're rooting for the Titans. I have a side wager on the Titans. I'll give you an extra bonus bet. Give me the under. The over-under is 53. I will take the under in this one. I think the Titans are going to do a good job of controlling the ball.
So you're taking the under in that game, too. All right, go ahead.
I think the Titans have an incredible running back. I don't think the Chiefs can completely shut him down. I think the Titans will be able to grind some clock out, keep Mahomes on the sidelines, but Chiefs look so good. Like I said, if I could get the half point to get over 7, I'd take the Titans, but Chiefs looked too good last week.
Okay. Now we go to the next picks. Is it soothsayer or it's a soothsayer? Our mystic, our predictor, Abdullah himself says, is it the Packers or the 49ers? It's a 7.5 spread.
This is the two storylines of the weekend are Andy Reid and Aaron Rodgers. Is this both of their last chance? 2 Super Bowls is a big deal. This could put Aaron Rodgers into greatest of all time conversation, I believe. And this might be his last chance to be this deep.
Why though? He hasn't shown has he? I should say, shown any signs of slowing down. And we'll get
not much, but a little bit.
Okay.
The 49ers beat up on the Packers a few weeks ago.
I saw that.
So, but I'm going to believe in Rodgers. I think the Packers are going to win this game. Mm-hmm. I think this is going to be. I don't see.
You think it's going to be a close game? Is what I'm seeing.
Yes, it'll be a very good game. I don't trust Garoppolo yet. Again, like I was saying about Lamar Jackson last week, I'll say the same thing about Garoppolo. Can he handle this kind of bright light? He's never been in this situation before. Obviously, Aaron Rodgers has. 49ers have a great defense, and they have a great offensive line. I just do not see Aaron Rodgers in this big spot faltering, putting up a dud of a game. I could be wrong. 49ers have a very good defense, but I think Aaron Rodgers pulls this one out.
What about the under and over in this game, since you're doing it for the final?
It's 46. I take the under in this one as well.
Okay. We're going to go to Steve on that in a minute. But, okay, Steve, who do you like in the Packers game, and what is your analysis of this contest?
I like the 49ers. I mean, it was a beatdown. They played in San Francisco earlier in the year. It was 37-8. and Quan Alexander and D Ford, two of the starting 49ers, just came back from injury last week. So everyone forgets because of what the Patriots did the first 8 games. The 49ers were a superb defense early on, and later towards the end of the year, they weren't as good because they were missing Quan Alexander and D Ford. Now, both of those guys came back last week. You saw what they did to the Vikings, 7 first downs the whole game. These guys are healthy now. They have a game under their belt. And I think Aaron Rodgers threw for like 105 yards in the last game. And this is, again, all in San Francisco. So I think I like the 49ers a lot. Jimmy Garoppolo, to me, was essentially a game manager last week. He didn't have to do a lot against the Vikings. And as long as he doesn't make any big mistakes, I think they're going to be fine. I really like the 49ers. The Chiefs, to me, was a closer call because of the Titans and Derrick Henry. The 49ers in this game, to me, are not a close call. I really, really like them.
Your refute, sir. And I'm looking at the great Mystic.
We saw the 49ers give him a good beating not too long ago. But, again, I cannot see Aaron Rodgers going into this game and laying a dud.
Okay.
Too good, too big of a player.
Our man.
He loves the spotlight.
Jake's official picks of the week. He likes the Chiefs. He's given up 7. And he likes the Packers giving up 7.
Getting 7.5.
Giving 7.5. Right, yes, thank you. No, the Packers are giving.
Getting.
They're getting?
They're underdogs.
49ers are the favorites by 7.5 points at home.
What? Marrone's lock of the week is the Packers. What, are you kidding? What?
Okay.
Marrone's lock of the week is the Packers.
You just jinxed me.
No, you'll be the first person. All right, do you know what it's time for? Jake, get the wheel. Get the wheel. It's over there. It's on the back, up there on the windowsill. It's time for the wheel. As you know, when Jake comes back after setting up the wheel right on my desk here, what we like to do, folks, we have these two very wise, very interesting men, one an analyst, the other one the soothsayer. Jake's picks of the week, one of the things Jake likes to do is compare his picks to randomness. Now, Jake, what is your total right now for the year? Where are you, 23?
Playoffs, I'm 5-2-1.
Yeah, and overall?
Overall, 29, 22, and 2.
That's our man, 22 and 2. Okay.
So now, I'm guaranteed at least 500 for the playoffs.
Okay, but let's do the wheel, Jake, and you can pick. You'll be fair in how to adjust this. And I turn the wheel first. We're looking at. And the wheel says.
Who is closest team is the Packers. Packers were one off.
Oh, the Packers. The wheel agrees with Bob Marrone. All right, and for the other game. Jake's analysis.
Titans.
Whoa, the Titans and the Packers. Could the wheel beat Jake? So now the Packers are getting, but both these teams are getting, one's getting 7, the other one's getting 7.5. So the wheel is going with the, with the dogs.
The underdogs.
All righty, just a spin of the wheel for all of you at home. Wouldn't it be fun next week when we only have, or in 2 weeks, when we only have one team to pick? And we'll be at Dominic's Fine Cigars. And we're going to do a little more analysis of what we just discussed. But officially, Jake's Picks of the Week has been brought to you by Dominic's Fine Cigars, licensed retailer with a big selection including Arturo Fuente, Patrons, and more. Dominic's Fine Cigars are located at Boston Post Road in Larchmont. They're open 7 days. And we remind you that leading up to the Super Bowl, on that Friday, we will be broadcasting the morning show live from their back smoky, fun room. And we'll be, and we hope that many of you who like cigars will even want to join us there. But we'll tell you more about that in the 2 weeks until then. So, what are the chances, and I'll ask this of Steve first, what are the chances that the wheel will beat both of you?
I think slim to none.
What about my lock of the week? Lock of the Marrone?
Well, you and the wheel and Jake are all on that. I think the Packers are in deep trouble. I just think the 49ers defense, as good as Aaron Rodgers is, he hasn't been really good this year. He was really good last week, but I just think the 49ers, now that they're healthy, I think they're just too much for the Packers.
I think you're overlooking the Packers defense a little bit. Packers defense is pretty stingy.
No, you're right. It's the old we'll see what happens.
The old we'll see what happens. All right, I've got a couple of other sports issues that I want to take up with you guys. One we already covered, but we didn't cover next steps for the Mets. The New York Post put out a list this morning of possible Met candidates. Hensley Mullins. I'm going to throw them out there, and both of you can see who you like. And I'll give you this list, Jake. Hensley Mullins, Eduardo Perez, Tim Boger, Tony DeFrancesco, their new first base coach, Luis Rojas, Buck Showalter, who a lot of people wishes would come, but I understand that some of these other teams, Boston and is already on that case. Joe McEwing and Kevin Long, who they got rid of as their hitting coach. Steve, who do you like?
Well, I like Buck Showalter, but I don't think there's any way the Mets would hire Buck Showalter, even if they could, because the whole new wave bandwagoning, we want a guy who's like Carlos Beltran, who never, is a popular guy who never really managed anywhere.
Oof.
All these new GMs are looking. I think they're more looking for a puppet. I always go back to Art Howe in the original days of Moneyball. They're always looking for a puppet where the manager has been trivialized, frankly, in Major League Baseball for a lot of teams. The Mets, to me, are one of those teams. So I'd pick Showalter for any and all of those three jobs, but I don't think he's going to be the one for the Mets. But that's who I'd pick.
Jake?
I agree. The Mets will not hire him, though. I've got an interesting little anecdote. Does anyone know who Brody's best man at his wedding was?
No, I don't.
I'm waiting with bated breath.
A.J. Hinch.
Oh, that's fantastic.
So, that says a lot about their friendship. You couldn't give him a heads up about Beltran. And B, would he ever consider hiring A.J. Hinch? He's available.
Can someone tell
me? Well, he's suspended for a year, right? Yeah, he's suspended for a year,
yeah.
Can somebody tell me why this Van Wegenen has even got the job? He just doesn't seem like an honest broker. There's something just smells about this dude.
I feel the exact same way.
What about you?
Well, he was an agent, and it's just bizarre that he would go from being an agent to being a GM. I don't know if it's ever happened before. Maybe it has.
Yeah, it has. It has in hockey, I know.
Yeah, but he's too smooth for me.
He's a little too
And look, I'm for analytics. We've had this conversation, Bob. When you have younger guys in the studio, I'm not against it, but I also don't think it's everything, because to me, by definition in baseball, it can't be everything. But he's certainly looking for an analytics type guy who is happy to do whatever he's told.
But you know what? I think, I don't know what other kinds of jobs you've had, Steve, but I was an executive, and you always use analytics. But at the end of the day, they call it executive because you have to make decisions. Decisions have to be made. Analytics should always be brought into it, but you can't make every decision on analytics. The day, the weather, the moment, the situation, whether a guy's hot, how well he's playing, what his compete level is, that matters in that specific moment, and analytics are the result of all of that. Sometimes analytics are the result, not the cause.
I understand, and I don't disagree. I always go back to the bunt, because the bunt has essentially been eliminated from baseball, right?
Yeah.
So I say now you can watch ESPN during the baseball season, and 3 or 4 times a week you're going to see games that are decided by bunts. Why? Because 100 years ago, 50 years ago, 20 years ago, guys bunted so much to sacrifice it was almost a give up that they'd let the runners advance and they'd throw to first. Now nobody knows how to bunt. And a lot of teams throw away these balls. Think just the last year, how many games do you remember seeing a guy pick up a ball at third, coming in from third on a bunt and throwing it into right field, 2 runs score, the game is over? I'd like to see analytically, since the difference I was told is 2%, not counting pitchers, you have a 2% less of an advantage if you bunt. I'd like to see those yearly from like the last 3 years, because I think that's changed. And the other thing I'll say about bunting, because I love bunting more than anything, the other thing I'll say is, what if you just sent your guy up every time when it's first and second and nobody out and tell him to bunt for a hit? Nobody ever takes that kind of thing into consideration. Why? Because nobody can bunt anymore. Why? Because analytics has thrown it out of the game. But I think it's a very powerful potential offensive weapon that has just gone by the wayside.
I think it was the fat guy on the Mets that said they didn't even teach him bunting in spring training, that he hadn't learned bunting for years. What are they going to do with Bubble Butt anyway? They're going to keep him, or they're going to use him as trade bait? Or they're going to send him
what fat guy are you talking about?
Smith on the Mets.
Oh, he could get a nice,
he
could get a haul. He's still a decent prospect.
Yeah, but he's going to eat himself out of the league, I predict.
He's blocked at first base, and I don't think he's playing anywhere else besides first.
Well,
perfect team for perfect DH, I would think, but of course that's not in the National League.
Well, that's not in the National League, is it? All right. Did you see where Odell Beckham is in the news again? Well, this thing kind of spurious. He evidently patted or slapped some reporter on the butt.
No, a security guard. I think it was an off-duty police officer
was
who was
it a
working
male or
security.
a female?
Luckily for him, it was a male.
Now, was he doing it for fun, or did he know the guy?
Well, the security guard was being a jerk and telling one of the LSU players to put out his victory cigar.
Oh, okay. And?
So Odell didn't like that and smacked him on the rear.
So that's
after he was done handing out his $100 handshakes.
What do you mean? He charges $100?
No, he was giving all the LSU players, regardless if they have NCAA, if they're still eligible for the NCAA, he was giving them all $100.
$100 bills?
Mm-hmm.
That's ridiculous. I don't care how much money you make. It's insulting to people to do that. No? Gee, Steve, am I crazy?
I think you should have just put it in their lockers if that's what he was going to do. I mean, Odell Beckham can't stay out of the spotlight. What a disappointment this year. I didn't think the Giants should trade him.
The Giants were right.
Well, tell me how he did. How did he do in his other team?
That was terrible.
Good. I'm glad to hear that. All right, I have one other thing. This week, if it were a different time of the year, we'd all be talking about the fact that the Rangers defeated the Islanders twice in a week. And that game the other night, 2 nights ago, with Panarin's just ridiculous. He's like third in scoring and fourth in the National Hockey League now. But I don't think the Devils have so much a problem as I think talking about a game that analytics won't help. Those rivalries, you never know how they're going to work out. I think they always defy reason.
I agree. Panarin has, frankly, taken New York by storm. 2 goals, 3 assists in the game that you're talking about from Monday. He's incredible. I mean, I've watched him in the past, as we all have, but it's the old when you watch him play every night or every game, you see how good he really is.
Oh, my God.
And this Georgiev, he's got the Islanders' number now. He's 4-1. They started in both games against the Islanders, and they actually played in the Coliseum, as I'm sure you know, last night, and the Rangers even beat them there with a late Kreider goal. So hopefully that's a turning point for the Rangers. We've talked about them a lot. They're young, so they're up, they're down. I'm hoping they can be 7th or 8th and get into the playoffs, because with a young team like this, you need playoff experience. And, if Lundqvist stands on his head, which maybe he will, you never know what could happen. But I think they still have a ways to go, even to be in 7th or 8th place. But I think they have a chance to beat the Islanders back to back, and the Islanders are very good. They're hot and cold now too. They had that incredible streak early, but to beat them back to back, to me, is in 4 days is pretty impressive.
Because they're a good team and they're well coached. My biggest concern with the Rangers is that they have young offensive defensemen who those kinds of kids always make mistakes on defense. I mean, even the games they won, the shot numbers of 40. I think last night Georgiev made 40 saves or 38 saves. You can't keep giving up 40 shots. It just doesn't. You can't sustain that. But that's the kind of team they have. They're up and down the rink. I just again, one of the acid tests for them. There is a team that when they kill a penalty, they take a guy off forward to play defense. Brendan Smith. I don't know if you're aware of that. Steve?
I'm sorry, you faded out on me. I couldn't hear the last thing you said.
They're a team that when they have to kill a penalty, they actually take Brendan Smith off forward and put him on defense.
Right, and put him on defense.
So that doesn't say... he's a long-time defenseman,
He is a rare two-way player like that, so that's pretty interesting. But you're right. But I think he's a good guy to have on your team just because he does have that versatility.
Oh, absolutely. Although, did you hear what happened to him the other night when he had that fight? He flew at his parents. They wanted to see him play. They only got to see him literally for 1 second. And Matt, the guy he fought, actually apologized to him after the game because, and he even said it. He said, "Look, Matt, who's a great team player, the guy he fought, he says he was just trying to get his team going, and he thought the guy dropped the puck. If he knew he didn't drop the puck, he wouldn't have done it." Because so he flew his parents in, and all they got to see him do was get in a wrestling match and get thrown out. It's funny with the little things you don't know what else is going on in a man or a woman's life until somebody writes about it. All right, Steve. Before you go, what's your latest missive in the Westchester County Post.com? I'm getting there.
Well, I shot a bunch of videos yesterday with Janelle on the backward looking at the 4 games in the NFL, forward looking at this weekend's games. I also did a thing on the college game, and thankfully I liked LSU to win that game as well. So there's going to be 4 new videos up at some point today. On Saturday at 12:45, I'm going to be on with my podcast partner, Joe Stazak, who's at ESPN Philly. All you have to do is Google 97.5 The Fanatic, and then click on, listen live or whatever. That's at 12:45 Saturday. So we'll be looking back a little bit, obviously more towards Sunday and the Sunday games. And so those are the 2 main things. Also, my podcast with Joe Stazak, Janelle will put that up probably today as well. We do a national podcast every week that covers, as much as we can cover, including all the baseball stuff as well. We branched out, of course, from the NFL. Because as you said, there were a bunch of stories this week, not just NFL stories, but the college game story, as well as the baseball story.
As you can tell, I have about as much interest in college football as I do sticking pins in my eye. So I rely on you guys to do that. Thank you very much. Steve Callis, everybody. Thank you so much. We're going to go straight to our next guest. He is the city councilman from District 2 here in New Rochelle. Unless I may not have screened it right. We'll find out. It may be my other guest calling in a little early, but you're on the air. This is Radio Westchester. Hello?
Good morning, Bob. How are you?
It is you, Mr. Tarantino. You used the hotline. I'm glad you did. You should use that always.
Well, the other line is not so hot.
Well, I didn't because I wasn't finished with my previous guest, so that's a very good use. Very wise. See, that's I gave you a compliment today, and I was praying that you didn't hear it because then you'd probably insult me. I actually
I didn't.
No, I'm going to go because I said it. I really should tell you. I thought that in the last decade you've been the finest councilman in the city. Yeah, I said
Thank you.
And
Thank you.
And I mean it and I believe it. You're also a rare breed. You're like one of those infections that keeps that keeps becoming resistant to antibiotics because you're a Republican in Westchester County.
Well, like I said, I will eventually, I guess, end up in a museum in Westchester, of course.
Well, but it would be fun to see you in a museum in Westchester, like a stuffed doll. Hey, did you ever buy that jacket you were looking for yesterday?
No, I didn't. Actually, I didn't. No, they told me that my wife and my daughter were with me, and they both laughed when I picked out a jacket that was more like a lavender.
Oh, please do me a favor. If you get a lavender jacket, come here in person, please.
I will.
Because I will not let you off the hook. Anyway, Councilman, I understand that there's a meet and greet. Is it this weekend with all the council members?
Yeah, today at 9:30, the League of Women Voters is having breakfast with the council. There'll be all 6 council members at the library at 9:30 this morning. And, looking forward to it. It'll be the first time with the new council, and since we've been either reelected or elected, and it's going to be interesting.
You know what? Had I known early enough, because I already had a commitment to a guest, I would have scooted out of here at 9 o'clock and remoted from there to get them. I actually would have got Sarah Kay to say something on the radio. Unless she ran out of the building.
9:30, it's 9:30 to 11, so there's an hour and a half.
I may just be able to squeak in there. But anyway, let's get down to cases. We had your colleague, Ivar Hayden, in the other day. And he expressed, and I've been asking everyone about this, the mayor and others, he expressed concern that we are hearing from some quarters. And I don't know what to call it. Is it a look back? Is it a moratorium? And I'm not sure the people that are concerned know what to call it. I mean, some people call for moratorium, which is financially insane. But how do you feel about this? All of a sudden, this awareness, but I don't know what it's based on, and I guess it's based on people realizing that A, the development happened even quicker than people thought, and B, because of that, they're seeing what it doesn't do, such as green space. What's your take on this?
Well, there's all different facets to that, and there's all different opinions, and I'll touch on a few of them. One I believe is that as the development is starting to occur, you're seeing disruption that people didn't anticipate. The average resident really didn't spend a lot of time looking at it because they're busy. They have their families, their jobs, and what they're seeing is when they drive around the streets, it takes a long time to move through downtown New Rochelle, and in some places there were detours that led to other detours. So you kept on going around in a circle.
Oh,
so
yes.
I think that was part of it, people seeing that. The other is, there's been a push by a particular group about preservation, and, the intention was never to destroy the history of New Rochelle. I think that we're going to take a good hard look at the structures in the downtown, and the determination will be which ones are worth saving and which ones are not. And I think that's become a conversation. Then there's the other conversation that you put a moratorium in place and you just stop everything.
No, that you don't do, in my view, anyway.
Well,
economically.
it's being spoken by a lot of people, and what I find interesting is that, before you make that comment, you got to look at the legal ramifications. We have a 10-year agreement with RXR, and if we attempted to put a moratorium in place, I'm sure that the first thing they would do is they would sue the city. So, that's a concern. The other is that any other developer who's part of this, if you put a moratorium on them and not RXR, you probably get a lawsuit from them. So, there's an agreement that was signed,
if I may,
and we're bound to it.
As a fellow Wall Streeter, I can tell you established a contract. Everybody agrees to the terms, and when people voted you all in, and when the council approved this unanimously, that's what we would call on Wall Street the comparison. And now the trade is being executed. It's too late to back out. Now, look back is one thing. A moratorium is silly, in my view.
Yeah, I mean, we do have the ability to adjust things like some of the parking issues and approvals in that manner.
And maybe get some green space, whatever. But you can't, this was the deal. This is what they signed up for. I don't understand. Right. I mean, I understand it, but I also understand it as it's benign, but an issue of benign incompetence on their part. You should have known this was going to happen. Well,
it's interesting because there are individuals in the community that are now concerned about, the preservation of every building. If the building was built and George Washington walked by it, it should be saved. Or if he had breakfast there, it should be saved. Or if, some other famous person did something at a place. I think before you landmark a building, you got to do a thorough investigation of the history of the building before you do those things. You don't blanket landmark.
I'm proud to say that I did, but an historic position in this city. I was the executive director of the Chamber of Commerce. And you knocked down the building that I was in. 100 years from now, people are going to want to know, where did Bob helm the Chamber of Commerce? And what will they find out? The building's gone.
Well, what we will do is we'll now push to put a plaque on the building. How's that? Look,
Thank you.
There were many buildings in downtown that warrant landmarking. There are buildings in other areas of the city that warrant
landmark them. I have no problem with that. But this was what you signed up for.
But we just can't blanket landmark everything because someone has an opinion that this is good. This should be landmarked and this shouldn't. There has to be a thorough investigation into the history of the building, and also you have to look at is that what is the future use of that building in the community, because we have buildings and I'm working on downtown right now because that's where everybody's concerned. You have buildings in downtown that are maybe a 1-story or a 2-story or a 3-story building that have absolutely no use in today's society. And what they are is you might have a store in the bottom, and the upstairs hasn't been renovated in 60 years, and it's empty. So what the other thing is that you have a lot of substandard housing down there.
Yeah.
That what you're trying to do is remove
go.
it and replace it with affordable housing, and that's the area. I think if anybody has a complaint about anything, it should be, and I have a concern about it, is the availability of affordable housing.
Well, yeah, that
there needs to be a better job done at that.
Yes, but it is a separate issue, really.
Right.
And it's an issue that people should complain about. Also, I thought the issue of making sure we have green space is a fair issue, and I think, and maybe I'm operating on a false assumption, but when this was all done, was the discussion to be sure that we preserve really important historical buildings? Isn't that a factor in approving each project?
Yeah, well, I think it is. I mean, we've already done that. I mean, the Standard Star building was preserved. The bank building on the corner of Locust is going to be preserved. There's, off the top of my head. I mean, the interesting thing is a couple of buildings that aren't being preserved, and there was no outcry about it. Is an example is the church that is right behind Liebman's.
Yes,
that building. If I remember correctly, it's one of the, if not the first, it's one of the first firehouses in the city of New Rochelle. So, there's a building that, warrants some sort of consideration.
Oh, right.
But none of those things were brought up at the time, and now all of a sudden this is being brought up. So, you become a little suspicious about some of the intent. And,
well, I got to tell you,
at the end of the day, we're going to make some people happy and some people unhappy.
When you do what I do for a living here, well, for not much of one yet, is you always look for the agenda. Where's the agenda? Where's it coming from? Who's pushing for it, and what are their reasons? Because it sounds noble enough, and certainly if they were to say you, and when I say you, I mean the city at large, the city needs to be sure that it considers this in every build, fine. But a moratorium, I don't understand.
Right. I made a commitment when I went on 12 years ago. We weren't going to tear down the Armory. We were going to, Wildcliff was going to stay. Now we're refiguring Wildcliff. We're going to, in all probability, be able to move the greenhouse project over on the Wildcliff property. There's a lot of good things happening to preserve and restore the past of New Rochelle. If you go down to the Armory right now, the new roof is being put in, so the Armory is not going to be torn down. So there are things that are happening that nobody talks about. And I think it's important that we do, as a city, a better job of getting this information out to the public so they know what we're doing.
Well, I remember when there's a building that's now used, I guess, for that phony We Hire people, whatever it's there, over on North Avenue. There was supposed to be a communication with the public for this. What happened to the use of that? Who's in there now?
Right. No, this is a problem that has to be addressed. And, when we were at our inauguration.
What is that building again? Who's in there now? Could you help me out?
Where Planned Parenthood is?
No, right, yeah. What is that? What do they do in there now? There's that group of clowns
Planned
in there that
Parenthood
pretend to hire people.
The front is supposed to be, was set up by RXR.
Yeah, and then it stopped. And then they put in those people that are supposed to be hiring people for jobs in the city. I'd like to see their track record.
Right. Right. But, it's interesting because one of the things I brought up at the inauguration was we have to do a better job of explaining what we're doing to the public. We just don't do a good job of communication, and it's something that, we're going to have to discuss soon and get the information out either on the website or with mailers, something to get the public, or even on the TV station, put things on.
Yeah.
Maybe we need to put, when we're doing a project, put that on one of the shows on the government station.
Yeah, and take a segment here once a week. I promised in my contract with the city we give you guys an hour a week. You should come by.
Yeah, I mean, I think it would be very important and would reach many, many people that right now aren't being reached on these issues.
Yeah, and I'm sorry I'm so snarky when it comes to them. I did sort of a reporter kind of thing. Given my background as a corporate educator, I applied there for a training job. And I really did it to see how they would react. They had great concerns that I could complete sentences when I spoke, so it didn't amount to anything. Yeah, I'm not. They got to do a better job. I don't know what the hell they do over there. Can you tell me?
That's why we're talking about it. I just think that.
Anyway, I know. I
trying to get me in trouble.
No, I didn't want to put you on the spot, but I'll put anybody on the spot over because I did that, and I was clearly overqualified, and not probably the right color. All right, so let's move on. What do you want to shout out about this week?
Well, about today, that's going to be exciting, and also just one other thing is that. I think I brought it up to you once before, but the Business Improvement District we had equipment for VR and virtual reality equipment and augmented reality. And what we did is we were finished with it, and it was over $20,000 worth of equipment, and the bid board has decided to donate the equipment to the school district.
I thought you were going to put it upstairs and do something with it here at the train station.
Well, we used it up there now. We're done with it up there with the program. And remember, through this whole process, we ended up winning that Bloomberg grant of $1 million.
Yes, of course.
So now the city's working with the Bloomberg grant to advance what we were doing on the city level. And we felt important to move this equipment into the educational arm of the city because now it's going to give children an opportunity to work on AR and VR equipment at the high school, and we're going to be doing a rollout.
Oh, that's great!
A week from Monday. I think it's the 27th. I got to check my calendar, but we're going to do a rollout, and the hope is that this equipment will be the incubator for expanding this program in the schools because. Young people today, you put AR, VR equipment, anything in technology field, they grab onto it.
They really do.
With it.
That's a great thing to hear,
so
Councilman.
I think it's a good thing for the city. It's a good thing for the district. So we're excited about that.
Well, as always, I want to thank you very much. I know we're running a few minutes late today. I got a doctor on the other line I got to get on to. Okay. Anything else you want to shout out about, Councilman?
No, that's it.
What about your new jacket?
If I get it, I will take a picture and send it to you.
Well, you might want to go down, where they sell boats down by the shore? They have these huge tarps that they put on cabin cruises.
Thank you.
May cut a couple of holes in one of those. Hey, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Councilman.
Okay. Have a good weekend.
Councilman Al Tarantino. And I know my guest has been trying to get a hold of me, my next guest, and we will get to him in a moment. Let me see. I think he tried on another line, and we'll try and reach out to him unless he calls on the hotline. We're late, and I can't wait to get to this guest. One of my favorite people.
Dr. Sternberg's line.
Yes, he tried to call on that. So that's who we're going to try and get, and we will reach out to him one more time, or he will call on the hotline, which I have just freed up. Sorry about getting to everybody a little bit late today, but he is as reliable as the day is long. There he is. All righty, here he is, folks. His longtime show, a real favorite in local radio here in Westchester County, Politics in Your Health, starring Dr. Victor Sternberg. He is a periodontist by trade, but as you know, he's concerned about the politics of this great nation as it affects your health and the quality of that health. And again, prevention is his thing. Doctor, sorry we ran a little late getting to you. Good morning, Dr. Sternberg. How are you?
Good morning, Bob, on this return to winter day. Looks like winter's not gone.
No, winter decided to make a return. Doctor, an awful lot going on in the world of medicine and prescription drug prices. Let's start out with your issues. What's on your mind today in the world?
Okay. Very much along the line which you're talking about. So a recent study, I don't know if you read it in the Wall Street Journal, it looked at state of Colorado noticed a significant uptick in the incidence of heart disease among even younger people. And this reverses a trend that's been going on for a long time where heart disease and heart disease deaths are on decline. This trend is now observed nationally, that there's been a 20-25% increase in patients needing care for heart disease of various types.
Why is this happening?
And, well, it gets back to the very issue we talked about, prevention. The younger population is more obese. and the lifestyles are more stressed for whatever reason. Exercise is only practiced by a few, and so we're seeing a reversal of a long-standing trend in the downward pathway to the going the other way, which is not surprising. Because all the things we talked about is about obesity. We've talked about lifestyles being so critical, and how the medical profession has been completely avoiding forever, for a lot of reasons, and my profession as well. The concept of preventing disease is more important than treating it. And so, interesting enough, because I'm a teacher at a dental school, I'm like a lone wolf about teaching prevention for dentistry. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that I constantly harp on the students, and this is a very important concept for your audience. At age 12, almost all of you had pristine, 28 pristine teeth. Mm-hmm. God's best, okay? What happened from age 12 to your 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s on that led you to needing replacement of teeth, removal of teeth, root canals, crowns, implants? How did that happen? And one of the things I pose to my students is, how did we go from 28 perfect teeth to where we are now? And they look at me like I have, two heads. and I say, unless you figure that out, then all you're going to do is change the hardware and not prevent it from happening again. Because whatever you do as a dentist is much less perfect than what the patient was born with and what came into their mouth in their teens. And so first thing I'll ask them is, they have a patient with severe periodontal disease or missing teeth, decay. I said, have you shown the patient how to take care of their mouth? And they look at me like, no, what do you mean? Says, get me a toothbrush. Did this week. We were contemplating extensive dentistry, periodontal treatment on a young woman in her early 30s. And I said, I handed the toothbrush to the patient. I said, show me how you brush your teeth. And there was no relationship between what she was doing and removing plaque from her teeth. So I then spent time with the students. I said, I want you to understand that without patients leaving plaque on their teeth after they clean their teeth, everyone brushes their teeth. So brushing is irrelevant. It's only about, are you effective in removing bacteria? Mm-hmm. And again, they look at two heads, because the concept that I, as a dentist, I'm dealing with a preventable disease 95% of the time, has not permeated my profession. Mm-hmm. And as in medicine, the idea that every person who comes to a physician should go through a lifestyle questionnaire, their weight, their exercise, their diet, should all be looked at, their habits. Medicine, and my profession even worse, because we are almost all preventable. Many diseases are not totally preventable, but the point being that as we listen, I'm going to just go to politics now. As we listen on the stage of the Democrats, and I'm not picking on them. They're the ones that are being interviewed now.
We pick on everybody here.
Right. So, there's no difference. Both parties are disinterested. So when I hear the story of, what kind of health care insurance we're going to provide for all, the great debate of whether we're going to keep private insurance or go to a Medicare for all, I'm going to tell you unequivocally, it's not about whether you have insurance. It's about what you do yourself and what the medical profession directs you to do. We cannot insure ourselves into health. Insurance, it's really disease insurance. It's not health insurance. So the concept that if everybody had health insurance, we'd live longer, we'd all be in better shape, is not true. It is completely fallacious. And if you just look at the rising cost of health care, despite the fact that we have more people on Obamacare than we had before, they're not related. In fact, I mentioned many years ago on your show, they did a study out on the West Coast, I think it was Oregon or Washington. They selectively gave 10,000 people who did not have Medicaid, they gave them Medicaid insurance. And they compared them to another population, 10,000, that would have qualified for the same study, but didn't get it. They looked at the number of emergency room visits, the group that had insurance and those that didn't, and healthcare outcomes, and you know what? They were no different.
Why?
And so it's not about, this is this issue that is a false narrative. It's not about insurance, and I'm not saying we shouldn't have it. People shouldn't be affordable. I'm not saying that. I have a friend in a hospital now at Columbia that literally, I'm not exaggerating, his health care has cost $5 million already since he got sick originally 20 years ago. One patient, okay. It's all being paid for by the federal government.
Mm-hmm.
And so the question that never gets asked in my profession, because remember, Bob, all the glory in healthcare is about fixing the problem. The bypass, the stent, the orthopedic surgery, the lung treating emphysema, treating AIDS, treating whatever it may be. And the dentistry, where's the glory and where's the money? Replacing teeth, fixing teeth. That is where the drive is. And the other issue is that healthcare providers are not intrinsically committed to the concept that what they're doing could be prevented. They have been drilled from the time they began school, make the diagnosis, and find a way to treat it. That's the emphasis has been forever in medicine and dentistry. And that's not going to change. My opinion is here I am, I'm practicing over 4 decades. And I walk into a school, the most modern school in the world. It has equipment you wouldn't believe. Nothing I had in dental school. And no one ever hands a toothbrush to a patient.
My goodness.
So where are we, and why don't we have this conversation? And that's a very important concept that nobody talks about. It's almost like it's irrelevant that preventing disease is possible.
You're very involved in your profession in terms of organizations, et cetera. What are the conversations like that you have with your peers?
My conversations are as follows. I just had a meeting in my house. We have a study club. We study dentistry together. We look at patient problems. And we had a fellow come from Australia, one of the brightest men I've ever met. He has found a software program to actually digitally make you new false teeth and digitally help you put implants in, all with digital dentistry. And I'm listening to this conversation, and everybody's enthralled. And I said, hey, guys, you know what? What about keeping people healthy and not needing this care? They look at me like I have 2 heads. So I'm involved. In fact, I'm writing an article now for my peers, but it's not embraced. And just like recently a study was done where they looked at the benefit of stents versus medication and lifestyle change in preventing death and recurrent heart attacks. Guess what? After you just remember a stent in the United States would cost $30,000 to $50,000 to put a stent in somebody's heart. Okay, they found that giving medication and people being consulted and following healthcare changes had the same outcome as putting a stent in.
Yeah.
And yet that routinely we put people's stents and it had blockage of the arteries. Because why is that? Because prestige in medicine, economics in medicine, the corporations in medicine are constantly stressing interventions that's going to be expensive and require great skill and great knowledge. I'm not knocking the skill, but I'm just pointing out that this study was important, but it's going to be rejected by a lot of the people in the middle. The only thing that's going to change is if the insurers learn, hey, wait a minute, don't put a stent in this patient, and then they're going to start to dictate cases where they should put a stent and they don't.
It's
That's
funny.
The other side of it.
Yeah, and of course, something that you've preached on this program came to bear yesterday that I'll share with you. We're talking with Dr. Victor Sternberg, longtime host of Politics in Your Health, heard on several radio stations here, and we share information from him now with you. He'll be back for his show one of these days. But more importantly, Doctor, yesterday I ran into a cardiologist, and he was telling me about this study, the one that you just cited. And he said, but a lot of people are still going to do certain things they know they really don't have to because they're afraid of getting sued. He talked about that. But when I heard a cardiologist, I asked him the question that I ask you all the time, and I ask every cardiologist when they come on this program, what the gold standard is for diagnosing a heart attack or for preventing one. And of course, we talked about the angiogram. Now, for his dollar, he says that even better than these so-called, I guess they are, these scans for, what do they call it, a non-invasive angiogram?
Yeah, they're virtual angiogram.
Yeah, thank you. He says his gold standard, number 2, is a stress test, and for people who are in ambulatory, a nuclear stress test. What's your response to that?
Interesting. I have looked at that issue, and it does have. There are several levels of picking up heart disease. One is clearly the electrocardiogram. Unfortunately, about 50% of the time, it fails to detect heart disease.
Mm-hmm.
Then you move up to the stress test, which brings it up to about 70%.
Okay, what about an echo?
An echocardiogram brings it up higher. However, this is important to understand. It is not. It doesn't approach the validity of an angiogram.
Right. Nothing does it?
And I've had a good friend of mine who was diagnosed with heart disease in his early 60s, saw a non-invasive cardiologist for many years, and he went through these tests and he would put on his diet. It works out. And meanwhile, about 2 years ago, he was having chest pain, and they thought it was just asthma. They kept putting, you can't have heart disease. They finally, because it didn't go away, they did an angiogram, and he had 98% blockage of the widowmaker. So, and it was not picked up in any of these tests. So there's no question that a stress test or nuclear stress test or an echocardiogram are an advance over a regular cardiogram. However, a virtual angiogram does have very good predictive value.
That's good.
Low radiation, and just like I've told many patients in my practice who smoke, go to White Plains Hospital, get a low dose CAT scan. It'll save your life. And again, it's being resisted because there's an economic cost to it. But those two tests, a virtual angiogram, which is the patient doesn't do anything, it's just lay there and they pick it up. There are no false negatives, which means that they don't miss something. They may overdiagnose something that's not there, but they don't miss things that are there. So, we are in an era where we can be much more effective.
Yeah, my own daughter called me last night. She knows I still play old man hockey, and she bought me as a gift about, I told you this 10, 15 years ago. I can't remember when it was, but one of those carbon scan, not carbon, excuse me. It checks for how much, oh goodness, what is it that the plaque contains? Oh, I'm having a senior moment here, doctor, but of course I'm talking about what's the stuff that makes your bone? Calcium, I'm sorry. It checks how much calcium. Yeah. And 10 years ago, I had the heart of a 38-year-old. But she said, 10 years are up. You better go for another test. She's probably right.
She's right, Bob. Unfortunately, you are active, I'm active, and there are things that can happen just in the aging process that are not totally dependent upon lifestyle. There are people who live to the 90s and 100s now routinely. And some of them lived a great lifestyle, some didn't. But unfortunately, as you are aware, that as we get older, the DNA, the telomeres that kind of cap our DNA, they tend to age. Although I told you there's evidence that vigorous exercise can slow that process.
Wow,
I feel that. How do you feel?
Well, I feel that. I actually do feel that my exercise has kept me in really good shape. It's kept me sharp. It's kept me healthy. Yep. What else do you have? What else is going on in your world that you want to tell us about? What's bothering you?
Well, an interesting article about burnout among physicians. Also, an article in the New York Times. It was in the journal. There's almost 50% of female physicians burning out. And about 35 to 40% of different age group of physicians are burning
Why
out.
the difference? Why the
difference?
That women have to go home and take care of kids?
Yeah, the women are finding that the stress of being a fully active physician and having a lifestyle involving children is overwhelming.
Yeah, sure it is.
And, medicine, you can't practice medicine on the run. It can't be all practice 2 days a week, with very few exceptions. So if you're involved with patient care, and you are completely committed, and you're worrying about what's happening at home, and you're getting home late, and you're having to do work at night, this is a very stressful profession. And even among our population of men, medicine's changed. Here I am sitting in my office now, we're having a conversation. Everything in this office I had, over the years, developed and built and equipped, and it's all mine. Okay, so everything goes on here, I'm totally the master of my fate, for better or worse. And in medicine, that used to be the case for you. Opened to put a shingle up, you were a psychologist, you were a psychiatrist, you were an ophthalmologist. Well, what happens today? Kids get out of school a lot of debt, and then they have to go work. Opening a practice is almost impossible because the large groups get all the patients. People go to the Marquisco group, Westmed group. So you can't have a private practice by yourself. You have to join a group. You join a group, and you're now a corporate executive. You're a corporate partner.
Mm-hmm.
You're getting paid by just like you work for IBM, and they have certain standards. They have certain requirements.
Mm-hmm.
You have to produce a certain amount of income. Your patients have to like you in surveys, and now you have to not only do that, but you have to use the computer all the time. So you have to examine a patient and sit there, type into the chart, and instead of dictating it or just writing, someone writes notes for you. And you've got in the back of your mind some lawyers that after you for defensive medicine is a big problem in the area. And we also have a population. Just remember, Bob, there was also there's been this change in our society in a kind of large-scale personality change. The idea of a physician being the profession is who he is. It becomes a lifestyle. I'm a physician. I work long hours. That's changed. Guys want to have a good lifestyle. They want to work less hours. They want to have a good income. They see how hard they work to get there. And the old-fashioned doctor that used to visit your house is long gone. And we live now in an era of corporate medicine with all the problems of being a corporate doctor in America, where the idea of really being committed to what you do 100% is becoming an anathema.
It's becoming passé, doctor. In fact, I can't remember the last doctor appointment I had that was at night.
That's right. In fact, I'll give you a story. Last night I have osteoarthritis in my right shoulder. Years of exercise, and it's very painful now. It's getting difficult to exercise. And I've looked at a shoulder replacement, which would put me out of work probably forever because the healing is months, if not years. And so there was a possibility of getting a shot, what's called plasma-rich protein. They take some of your blood, they spin it out, and they inject it into a joint, whether it be a knee or shoulder. And right now it's not FDA approved because they just don't have enough evidence. But I was willing to try it, pay for it myself. It wasn't going to break the bank, and to see if I can repair this shoulder of mine before I can't do anything. And so I called up to get an appointment. And if I didn't get there by 5:40, I couldn't have an appointment.
Yep.
And forget Saturdays, forget evenings. So here I'm a busy guy supporting the world here and taking care of my patients. And I can't get an appointment that works into my lifestyle. And I come in, this is a little sugar.
Everything's like this. You can't get your car fixed during the day. You can't buy. I've had this dream. If I became a big investor and started a new business, I would open something called a night ball, where you could get your car fixed, a doctor, a dentist, a lawyer, only nights. Anyway, go ahead, Doc.
So as I contemplate in my own mind, just in the political arena, and I'm interested in politics and healthcare. What are the existential issues facing our country in terms of what we could do something about? I'm not talking about as much what they're doing in China or what Russia's doing with missiles. That's a whole different discussion. That's outside the realm of what Americans do. And what have we not resolved? We have not resolved the providing healthcare, effective healthcare, preventing disease, and making it possible for most of us to live good long lives. We have not turned that corner at all. In fact, we're still going the other way. We have not figured out yet how to provide a real world-class education for people from elementary school through college in a way that we have a highly educated population and students don't go into debt for the rest of their lives. And I'm not. This is kind of the crux of it. If we do not have a highly educated population by the time they leave high school, we are doomed to having all these issues go around and around and just pull our hair out because those are essential. That's an essential part of our culture that's been lost. And I mentioned before, Bob, this really disturbs me because even when I deal with students, and some of them very high grade points, some they got into dental school with 3.8, 3.9 averages. This was unheard of when I went to school. You had that average, you could go to MIT. I don't find the Renaissance people that I would think, people that could know a lot about a lot. And I keep asking them questions. When I ask them the simplest question, how did the patient get here before you treat them? They look at me like I have two heads. That's a fundamental question. When somebody walks into a doctor's office with chest pain,
sure,
the first thing the question should be, how did we get here? How did we get here is more important than what we're going to do, because if we don't know how we got here, why do you think you're going to fix the problem forever? You won't. And it's a question of being educated to think intellectually and pragmatically and evidence-based, and that's not part of our educational system.
No, it is not. And that was always the benefit of at least having some component of a liberal arts education. A lot of people, I'm sure, in your classroom, and you may be offended by this, but they may look at the job the way a mechanic looks at his or hers. I got to fix teeth. Why do I care about all these other things?
You know what, my friend? Or I got to put a stent in. I got to thread it in there, or I got to replace that vessel, because we're not an intellectual society, unfortunately. Even at the highest levels of our medical professions or in education, because let me ask you a question. We've been spinning the wheels about educating children, particularly those that are disadvantaged, for how many decades?
Oh, I'm tired of screaming about it on the air. Yeah. Tired of it.
So how many people that can think objectively, don't think about the politics of it? You can say, listen, we have a system that's not working. What can we do that can fix a problem, forgetting what the effects on the teachers are, forgetting what the effects on the economy are? If this is so important, what can we do? That doesn't get answered.
No, Doctor, I have a question for you that's more broadly apropos of this discussion. I did a story this morning, which led to a wider berth of commentary about it. I don't know if you read it, but Goldman Sachs is about to pay $1 billion, actually $1.1 billion. I'm dismissing another $100 million like it's change, because they laundered money, or at least loosely, in some way, defrauded people over just billions of dollars. And one of the things that I've observed in the last 30 years, and I don't know if you feel this way too, is a lessening of the moral fiber of the whole country. Yes. It's everybody. Yes. As long as I got mine, I don't care. I'm going home to dinner at 4:30. I'm a judge. Put them in jail. I'm too busy right now. There are certain jobs, doctors, judges, but any job that you do, there's a certain amount of sacredness to it. You people are paying you. You owe them for what you've committed to. But the banks robbing you, and I know it's going to cost me some sponsorships, but I've never walked in a car dealership that I trusted in my life, and I'm 69 years old. What's happened to us?
I think two things. There's no shame in America. If you take athletics, let's take Alex Rodriguez.
Well, let's look what's happening now in the cheating scandal in baseball.
Right. That's right. And that may stop because the penalties are significant now, and people losing their jobs. And teams, maybe they start taking the victories away. But, the fact that at the level of when Richard Nixon, obviously committed high crimes and misdemeanors, he was the first president to leave. Years later, they had him on TV. They wanted an opinion. They reincarnated him. Mr. Clinton is an icon in the world on the left, even though it's obvious to me that he's a dishonest man. And he just didn't lie. He lived a disingenuous life. And there is a lack of shame. We don't seem to hold people to stand and say, you know what, you're not in the public arena anymore. If you can make ratings for a TV show by putting you on. Many years ago, that Sandy Weil on Face the Nation, or one of those shows, and they asked him what caused a great meltdown on Wall Street and what he would do to fix it. And it almost blew me away. He said, well, we some of these institutions, we have to break them up. They're too big. They have too many interests in too many ways, which means the banks are involved with too many other things. And yet, the person that was interviewing him...
Yeah, they will do it again. My acronym...
No. This is important, Bob. The person interviewed did not say the following. Sandy, Mr. Weil, you were the architect of the dismantling of Glass-Steagall, and you benefited to the tune of $1 billion when you sold Citibank stock. And you are one of the main reasons that we had the fallout on Wall Street, and you're telling us that the banks have to be made smaller. That's where you need that kind of reporting, but it never brought up, never.
No, it isn't. Well, I jumped the gun there. My sensibility about that always was, if you're too big to fail, you're too big to exist. Yeah. Because it does away with everything.
Bob, remember, we should remember this, what happened in 1999 when a number of Republicans and Roy Rubin, who was the Secretary of Treasury.
Bob Rubin,
Bob Rubin were able to get to the President Clinton and said, this is great for the economy. It's going to boom because of this. We're going to make the banks and everyone, we can absorb all these companies. And they convinced the President and the Congress to pass the bill, and the President signed it. And no one wants to look back and say, holy cow, look what we did. We've had no post-mortem on
No.
what led us there. No post-mortem.
None whatsoever.
The people who were responsible will not be put under the microscope.
Doctor, it's time to go, but it is always a pleasure. We look forward to talking with you again next week. Dr. Victor Sternberg, where can people find you if they're interested in your services, sir?
Please look at my website, Dr. Save My Teeth. Much of this information that I speak about prevention or even the politics of healthcare is there. Please look at the website and communicate with me if you have any thoughts or questions. They'll give you the phone number. I'm happy to take a call or an email. Have a great day, everybody.
Okay, thank you very much. Folks, in 1 minute, we're going to talk with our friends from Choice. Right now, we've got to give you a weather report and reset. It is 9:05. We're just coming up on 9:05. You're listening to Radio Westchester Mornings with Bob Marrone. I am he. You can listen live on RadioWestchester.com, Marrone, Mornings with Bob Marrone, or you can go to MyTuner Radio where those particular applications are available, and you can even tell Alexa to put us on. We're available on Facebook, YouTube, Periscope, Instagram, iTunes, soon to be on Spotify. Let's take a last look at the weather. The weather is brought to you exclusively by United Hebrew of New Rochelle, voted one of America's best rehabilitation and senior care campuses, and it's right here in New Rochelle. Visit uhgc.com. It's up to 24. It's getting up to 29 today, but not much higher than that. Wind chills will be in the teens through the afternoon, but it'll stay sunny and breezy. Now, tonight, clear to start with clouds building overnight, lows around 15. It will be cold, folks. The real story, though, is tomorrow. Cloudy during the morning with the first snowflakes arriving between 11 and 2 p.m. Now, let's get real. North of 287, you may see 4 or 5 inches of snow. Below that, and certainly towards the water, such as here along the Sound Shore, you're not likely to see much snow. But if you do, it should be gone by the overnight. Saturday night, cloudy with any lingering mix of rain showers ending mainly before midnight. Temperatures will hold fairly steady, mid to upper 30s. So particularly here below 287, the snow should be gone by Sunday when it will be partly sunny, breezy, and chilly. Highs around 37 degrees. This next hour is brought to you by Aging Issues Management, Aging Issues Radio, the law firm of Payne & Kahn, Plug-in Virtual Reality, and Dominic's Fine Cigars, licensed retailer with a big selection, including Arturo Fuente, Padrones, and more. Dominic's Fine Cigars, located on Boston Post Road in Larchmont. They're open 7 days, and I bet you can't wait to see how Jake's picks work out. And 8 o'clock on Monday, we will share those results with you. On hold is the executive director of Choice. They're located here in New Rochelle. They are also headquartered now in White Plains. They have an office in Peekskill. They help a lot of people, the homeless and the mentally ill. Please welcome the executive director, Guy Fessenden. Good morning, Guy.
Good morning, Bob. How are you?
Doing pretty well, all things considered. It's sunny here, but it's not. But it's cold. I'm going to come right out. You know, we've told people what you do, and people know about your offices here and all the people you treat. And we have a case. In fact, I haven't seen her walk by today, but she's going to be my subject. We don't know her name, and I wouldn't use it. But there's a homeless woman who comes by, passes in front of the radio station every day. She's got a cart with all the belongings, even a suitcase in it. She gets food in the radio station, sometimes goes in there and sit, but she does observe the rules that you can't stay very long. Others who go in there, they go in and they try and sack out for the night, and eventually the police come and say, you can't stay, you can't sleep here. And so they say they're sick, and an ambulance comes and all that expense and blah, blah, blah. Now, if someone wanted to help this woman, what I'd like you to do, again, is give the thumbnail of what Choice does, and then tell us how you would approach this woman. If I called you tomorrow or Monday and see her, and I called you, how would you approach it? But first, remind people in general what Choice does.
Okay, thank you. Choice helps people at a variety of places in life where they might need a little bit of a helping hand. We provide what they call case management, which is a very broad category of ways to be able to help someone when the system is skewed against you. So if you wanted to get Social Security benefits, the automatic answer when you go in the first time is no. And then you have to fight to make it a yes. Well, people without physical and mental challenges will sometimes have a very difficult time doing that. And we will work with the person to help them to be able to turn that no into a yes. And the same thing for food stamps, for housing, for medical coverage, for legal help, immigration issues in particular, lots of areas where it might just be too tough to go it alone. So if we met that person that you were referring to at the grocery, at the
train
radio
station,
the train station, yeah, then what we'd probably do is say, let's go get something to eat. Because in general, folks haven't eaten for a couple of days, and it's very hard to pay attention when you haven't had a meal. So we'd sit down, try and have something reasonably healthy, and talk about how they're doing and where they are at their life right now, and what their goals are, and what they'd like to see that's different. Sometimes people just say, I'm very happy doing what I'm doing, and I sleep by the lake, and I walk around and get enough money to be able to survive, and I don't need any other help, and I don't want any other help. And you can't force yourself on somebody.
Do you think that's true? Do you think they're deluded, or you think that some people really like the lifestyle?
I think some people like the freedom and the flexibility. We had a man in the wintertime who preferred to live by the river because he just didn't want to deal with the BS of having to find a shelter space or wait online or sleep with other individuals like him, where you couldn't trust that your stuff was going to be safe at night, that you were going to be safe at night. You had to get up at 5 o'clock in the morning to be out by 5:30, and you couldn't come back until 6 o'clock the next day. Yeah, and he said, I don't need this. I would rather just pitch a tent somewhere, be a little bit cold, and be in control of my own destiny.
Now, how does he manage to stay by a lake? Is there any? He's got to find a lake where there's no law against it. I mean, out in San Francisco and Seattle, there doesn't seem to be any law against pitching a tent. What are the rules applying to that?
If you don't get caught, it doesn't count if you don't get caught.
Okay, gotcha.
And the further north you go, the more flexibility that you have in that.
Yeah, I should think so because of the cold. Okay, so let's say now you sat down with this woman and she said, and you see that the issue is mental illness. But again, if the issue is mental illness and it's driving them to say, no, you can't do much about it, can you?
You can, to the extent that the person, who's in charge of themselves wants to have a different type of life. And we can go through and say, are you happy doing what you're doing, or would you like something to be different? Would you like housing? That's going to take a little bit of time, but we can get you to safer and better housing over time every week. We may have to start with a drop-in shelter, and that's a tragic place to have to start. But we can work up from there as long as you're willing to make that time investment with us and know that the outcome can be, a lovely one-bedroom apartment with flowers and furniture and TV and things like that, where you can control your destiny better and you can have a happier life. But sometimes, because people may not have the wherewithal to be able to do that on their own, they don't even think of that.
Yeah, that was my next question, or even series of questions. How often do you come across someone who doesn't want to stay homeless, but doesn't know what's available, doesn't know about food stamps, doesn't know how to apply, doesn't know how to get Medicaid or even welfare? How common is that?
Every day.
Every day.
Every day. Because, when you just kind of sink down and you keep dropping and dropping and dropping, it gets more and more sad. And you kind of forget about what the option is 3 or 4 rungs above you. And that's true of anybody. It doesn't have to be someone with special needs. It doesn't have to be someone who's homeless. But sometimes it's hard to visualize 3 or 4 steps ahead, much less one step. And people will sometimes forget that there are some awesome options out there for things that can lead them to a better life. And that's what we try and do. We help the person get to that level of dignity and safety that they deserve, but sometimes can't see. And we just try and help them see around that next bend.
Okay, let's take our example again, and this and she seems to be a very nice woman, very respectful. She's probably in her 80s, I would say. She's able to push a cart. She goes back and forth. Let's say she was amenable to help. What do you do first?
The first thing you try and do is find her a place of safety, and that might be a drop-in shelter.
What is a drop-in shelter specifically? What is that?
It's a place where you show up around 2 o'clock in the afternoon and sign up for that night, go away, come back around 6, 7 o'clock. You're able to stay there until about 5 o'clock in the morning, and then you're out for the day.
What if she hasn't eaten all day?
We'll take care of that.
Okay.
There's plenty of places. Our case managers always carry a small amount of money where they can help somebody to be able to get food on the spot. But there's also tons of food pantries. Mm-hmm. We run one where people can stock up for the week and be able to get enough food to sustain themselves. If you don't have food, that's the first step. You can't think clear. You're hungry. It's just there's no dignity, Bob. People deserve to have dignity. I don't care what your circumstances are in life. Mm-hmm. I don't care, what your background, your history, any of that is. People deserve to have a certain minimum life standard, and that includes food and shelter.
Okay,
and that's where we start.
So you get her some lunch. Maybe you get her a nice hot meal or hot sandwich, and you take her to sign up at 2 o'clock at a shelter. Do you know what shelters are safe, and I would assume, and which aren't, or does it depend on geography? I suspect
it's geography. It's where they want to be. But the other thing that we might do is try and repair a family relationship, and maybe there's a family member with a bedroom that we could start them off with, and there's a wide variety of options that you have.
How common is that?
The important thing is generally, by the time somebody's walking around the street with a shopping cart, their family has given up on them. Mm-hmm. And that's the key. And that's not to say anything negative about the family, mm-hmm. but when you have a lifetime illness that leads to certain behaviors, at some point the family may say, look, it's a choice of us or you, and we have to choose us. Mm-hmm. And the family member gets cut loose, and they'll try and help a little bit, but in general, the person then kind of just drifts away, and that's what starts the slide. 80% of the people that we work with don't have family support. Mm-hmm. So once you lose that family support, it's very, very hard to stop the slide.
My guest is Guy Fessenden. He's the executive director of Choice, and as you can infer from this conversation thus far, they work on helping people who are homeless or down on their luck get the support that they need and maybe get a start. So now, and we're working through we know of a real person, but we're using it as a hypothetical case. So the person says, okay, they do want the help. You get them a meal. Family doesn't come through. You get them signed up for that day's drop-in shelter. What's next?
Then we start to apply for benefits
such
that
as
they might not have, and that could be a wide range of stuff. It could be Social Security, disability benefits. It could be food stamps. There's emergency housing money that's out there, so that you might be able to get a place to stay that DSS, the Department of Social Services, would pay for. There's a wide variety of options that a person has financially in order to be able to get a predictable amount of income coming to them on a monthly basis.
Do you ever find that they actually have these benefits but aren't using them or don't spend the money? Do you ever find that they've already applied and could have it but don't do it?
Well, sometimes people will sell their cards, their EBT cards, for $50 and lose the benefit going forward. So there's all kinds of scenarios out there that lead people to do desperate and things that may make sense in the short term, but don't make sense in the long term. And we have to correct all that. We have to help people to be able to see a little bit farther than just today. But when just today's really hard, That's a tough thing to do sometimes. That's not on the person. That's on us to help extend their vision and say, what if we could do all of the following, and instill in them hope. We do that in the jail. If you can see beyond today and into a brighter future, then it changes your behaviors,
it gives you some motivation,
it changes your attitude, and it gives you hope, and it gives you something to strive for.
Okay, let's say if our case now says, okay, please, I want you to apply for food stamps, SSI, and all the rest of it. Where is she right now? Does she come to your offices? What does she do? What do you do for her when she gets there?
About a third of what we do is outbound.
Mm-hmm.
We have 30 vehicles, so that are 60 people who directly help people have the ability to be able to go out and see them in the community. That's generally for people who are housed because they're easier to find. But people will regularly come into our office. We'll have 4 or 5 people in the lobby at any point in time waiting to see case managers to be able to talk about what's next. We put together a care plan for a person where we say, okay, let's talk about where you want to end up and all the steps that happen along the way. And let's articulate all of that into just a couple of pieces of paper that says, okay, and then I want to do this, and then I want to do that. And then we sit down with that living, breathing document and say, how'd we do this week? Okay, we were going to do this. Did we get it done? Yes, we did. Okay. And as people start to check more boxes off of that list, they start to add more things to the bottom. They start to think differently. They start to say, well, maybe just getting an apartment with no furniture and a sleeping bag is a wonderful goal. Well, maybe I want furniture. Maybe I want a TV. Maybe I
all
want
these
cable.
things, as you're getting it rolling, what is the first thing that you usually succeed at doing for them? I want to assume success in the case, because we'll talk about the others as we go along.
Sure. You want to get quick hits. Right off the bat, you can easily get somebody a cell phone. And now they're connected. Now they're connected back into society. You can reach them. They can reach you. They can call doctors. They can call pharmacies. They can do all types of different things now that you can't do with a phone. Can you imagine walking around without a phone?
Not these days, no. Okay, so a phone, they could make phone calls. They can call you. What's next?
You try and determine if there's, you try and connect them into doctors, get their doctors back, and get some meds if that's an appropriate thing, and generally it is, because somebody who's unmedicated, who's out on the street, is probably not doing as well as if they were indoors somewhere with getting the benefits from medication. And that's a blanket statement. It may not be fair to say. But in general, get to a doctor, start to deal with any health issues that go beyond mental illness, and start to help that person to be able to feel better, get reconnected to medications if that's an appropriate thing to do, and start to feel better emotionally about where you are in life.
Yeah, because that's an interesting thing. When I was writing my notes for this interview, and I separated out, believe it or not, mental illness from depression. Now, depression's a mental illness, but you've said many times here, how many people are out there, they may have a mental illness, but that's primary. Secondarily, they've lost all their self-esteem, all their will, all their self-respect, and feel like garbage and hopeless. That has to be, it's almost an amalgam. You could have just that. There are people that famously give up in life because of alcohol or losing a family. How do you make those distinctions, and what's that like?
I'm sorry. So, how do you make the distinction of?
I mean, I'm sure they're integrated in some ways. In other words, someone may be a schizophrenic and not taking their medication. Yeah. But someone may not even be a schizophrenic, but is so depressed, so given up, so hopeless in their feelings, and perhaps they have both things going on.
Yeah, and you try and fill up their schedule. You try and get them some doctor's appointments. You try and get them out into the community. There are different places that provide classes. We periodically run an art group where people can get together and socialize. And what we found is that people who are out on their own have lost that ability to be able to socialize. So put people together in a class, work on a silly art project. But more importantly, talk to your neighbor. start to reintegrate, start to get used to talking to people and doing something that is fun and isn't, all about, oh, you're sick, oh, you need meds, oh, you need housing, oh, all this stuff you have to do. There's things that we have to do every day, but there's things that we choose to do. We choose to exercise. We choose to, cook. We choose to, integrate into Facebook and send emails and all that. And we've set aside a small amount of our space to be able to help people, not just with what they have to do, but with their overall wellness and feeling good about themselves again. Don't people deserve that?
Of course they do.
I don't care what your situation is in life. People deserve to feel good. And that's what we try and do. We try and help with the concrete things. But along the way, let's take a minute, reintegrate back into a socialization plan. Learn how to cook on food stamps so that you're not just eating out of a cart. We have a clothing area where we get some donations, and we'll either give people clothes or we'll lend people clothes if it's better clothing. So if you're going on a job interview, if you're seeing your family after 10 years, if you want to feel different, when you put on good clothes and you feel different, well, that's part of what we do. Probably about 35, 40 things in total that we'll try and help a person to be able to do, from the concrete, let's get housing, into the feeling better. Let's learn how to cook on $200 a month of food stamps.
Okay, let's look at some of the specific issues that you have to deal with. And let's start with drugs or alcohol. How many people have addiction problems, would you say, in the population of homeless?
Well, I would say that 50% of the people that we're dealing with have dealt with substance abuse treatment, not just issues, but treatment within the last year.
Wow.
And what happens is people start to take medications, and the medications will help with the primary diagnosis. Okay, I have voices in my head, and I don't want them to be that loud, so I take some medications, and that helps bring it down. But at the same time, with those medications, I get side effects, and there's a listlessness, and there's that hollow feeling, and I hate that. So as soon as I start to feel better, and the primary benefit of that drug is realized, then I stop taking the drug so that I can get rid of the side effect. But then the primary diagnosis comes back, and I say, I don't want to take that drug anymore because of everything that it made me feel. So people start to self-medicate, and that's drugs and alcohol. And it's not effective, and it doesn't work. And then suddenly they're in a world where they don't have money, but they need to be able to procure drugs and alcohol. And that leads to crime, and that leads to, the vicious circle of going back and forth into jail without treatment.
Now, what percentage of those is a straight-up drug problem not related to schizophrenia or any of the other mental maladies?
I don't know that I have a good number on that, but I would guess
What's your sensibility?
That with it, I would say probably half are related to self-medication and half aren't.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense.
I need something to make me feel better, which is really what drugs and alcohol do.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not tied to a specific mental illness per se. It's just, I'm feeling pretty crappy. It's the wintertime.
Well, yeah.
It's the holidays. It's my birthday. I'm taking inventory of my life. And how did I get here? I used to be an accountant with a family.
Well, that's what I want to... We're going to get to that before we're done. Let's take mental illness now. How common is that among the homeless?
Oh, highly prevalent. Yeah, according to the CDC, at some point in their life, everybody is mentally ill. Mm-hmm. And it's just a question of, are you able to deal with it and rise above it? When you hit the very bottom of your life and bad things happen, you lose your job, and you lose your family, and somebody dies, and you just start this slide, mm-hmm. and that leads to a depression or something like that, you are now technically classified as mentally ill.
Of course.
Some people are able to do better and move beyond it on their own. Many aren't. But if you take your deepest, darkest moment when everything was sad and everything was mm-hmm. miserable and horrible, and you say, that's going to be my new normal. That's how it's going to be every day. Mm-hmm. Well, that's what life is like for people on the street.
I bet.
Unfortunately, what we do is in general. Now, this is maybe stated a little controversially, But in general, people care about homelessness to the extent that they have to step over the homeless.
That's very true. No, there's no question
And
about
the
it. It's not
mission-
controversial.
The mission that they ask their elected officials, the politicians,
Is
to
get
do
him off the
is
street.
get this guy off the street. I don't care if you drag him to the back dumpster by the CVS, but just get him out of my way so I don't have to step over him and I don't have to think about it and I don't have to feel bad about it. And the politicians may do just that, or they may take it a step beyond, and they may try and actually help the people. But these are real people out there.
Of course they are. I wanted
These
to
are
make
people with lives and rights, and they deserve better than what they've got.
Especially in a
general.
society as rich as America and as well off as America. Just this is a very pedestrian layman observation, and it's always given me some hope for homeless folk. Is I never read that suicide is a huge problem in the homeless community. Is that true or not?
Oh my God! We have in general. So we have a population of 2,000 people,
Right.
that we work with on a daily
Yes.
basis.
Yes.
During the holidays, we will have 5 deaths a week.
Oh my God! And is it all suicides?
No,
That's
but
okay.
it's generally related to the lifestyle.
Right. No,
that
but the reason
has
I
been
ask
chosen
that
for them.
is obviously there are people who are homeless who still decide not to kill themselves, and they do want to live. So does that give you some sort of some motivation to begin with?
Sure. You were very kind to hook us up at another station probably about 5 years ago.
Yes.
And my wife and I were able to do a radio show
I remember.
where we got to talk to clients and they shared their stories.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the questions that I would ask periodically that blew me away was I would ask somebody on the air, okay, you have unquestionably a very, very hard life, and certainly not the life that you or anyone would have chosen for themselves. What's your relationship like with God? Are you mad at him? You get one life, and this is it. What do you think about that?
Tough question.
And what's your relationship with God? And 100% of the time, Bob, 100% of the time, they said, I get up every morning and I thank God for my life and that I'm still alive, because I look to my left and I look to my right and I see people who haven't been so lucky and they're dead. The average life expectancy of somebody with schizophrenia is 48 years old, and I'm 52. Holy cow, I beat it.
That's interesting as all get all. And that voice you hear on the other end of the line is the executive director of Choice. They're a well-known organization here in New Rochelle. White Plains is their headquarters. They're up in Peekskill. They have a population they treat now of 2,000 people, homeless, getting them services, trying to get them off the street. We're mentioning mental illness, and I want to go into another category here. Even for you and I, who have health insurance, if we want to go see a full-fledged psychiatrist, they don't even take insurance anymore. They want cash, and we might not get an appointment for 6 weeks. These people, tell me.
6 months.
Now, tell me what for these folks, how long it takes to get a psychiatrist.
There's a waiting period to be able to get in of 4 to 6 months.
And what if they're suicidal?
4 to 6 months.
And what do they do during that?
Everybody's suicidal, Bob. Get out. You see that long line? Get on the end.
Good God. Now, what can you do for them in 6 months? Can you get someone at least to write a script in the interim for them?
Yeah, there are workarounds that we can get to. And that's where emergency rooms will come in and places like that, where you can bring somebody in on an emergency basis and they can get some help. Part of what has to happen and is happening elsewhere, and New York is usually later in the process of something like this, but getting telehealth, getting the ability to be able to Skype with a doctor who will call in a script somewhere is the wave of the future. It's happening in a lot of other states, not all of them yet.
We've read about it.
And New York is more cautious. Make sure that the process is set up right before they implement it and all that. But that's where you're going to be able to address some of this stuff. So that Choice, for example, will probably end up setting up a dozen rooms, secure rooms with secure lines, where you can connect to a psychiatrist in Rochester or Syracuse or Buffalo, or ultimately outside of the state of New York, once they can figure out the billing and how that would all work and some of the mechanics to it. But that will start to address some of this issue. But for now, it's bad. It's bad in Westchester.
But it's phenomenal, this numbers. Now, before we get talking about the caseworkers again, I want to get into some of these cases because I know this is an uphill battle. A typical success, I have to play pretend because we don't know. Let's say this woman that I speak of really wanted help. What would success look like, let's say 6 months from now?
6 months from now, we would hope to have her own place. There are wonderful places out there. One place in particular that's heroic is a place called the Furniture Share House.
I'm familiar with it. Yeah.
They will get donations from people when they move, furniture, when people die, whatever it might be. And they keep a big warehouse, and they recognize that when you get your first apartment, there's a lot more that goes into it. So you can go up there if you're with a member, and Choice is a member, and walk around and pick your furniture, which they will deliver to your new home.
Okay, what kind of home are we typically getting for them?
It could be a one-bedroom. It could be a studio.
Mm-hmm.
It could be a situation where you've got a roommate who you don't know, and we'll put people together. If there's a two-bedroom apartment that becomes affordable,
mm-hmm.
that we're able to do with DSS funding, then we'll do something like that. Could be a one-room deal. There's all kinds of different options out there. There's also a continuum. If you're in a shelter and I can get you a one-room apartment,
mm-hmm.
Then that's the next step.
Okay, so 6 months from now, we've got this woman in a one-room apartment. What about food? What about health? What about being able to persist?
Yeah, within 6 months, you can set up all of her benefits. You can set up everything that she needs so that she can be a little bit further along in the process. Be safe. That's the most important thing.
Mm-hmm.
Be indoors. And, the coolest thing to see is a person who gets an apartment and sits down and chooses to watch cable TV. A lot of all of this stuff is stuff that you have to do. You got to do. I got to get an apartment. I got to get furniture. I got to spend on heat. I got to.
Mm-hmm.
But when you get to cable TV, for a lot of people, that's the first elective expenditure that they've made in their life. And they sit down and they watch whatever it is, Wheel of Fortune, and they just look with tears in their eyes at, oh my God, look at what I've been able to accomplish. It's a remarkable feeling. It's a remarkable thing to be able to do. And it's unfortunate that agencies like us have to exist in order to help a person to be able to get there. But thank God for organizations like the Department of Community Mental Health,
mm-hmm.
For the Office of Mental Health in the state, the Department of Health, that have earmarked money that recognize that the system is so hard going it on your own that every once in a while you need an advocate, you need an ally, and somebody who can help you along the way.
Now, for how many months, years do you continue to follow up with this person and keep track of them?
We try and keep a light touch on the person as long as possible. Obviously, the Department of Health and Medicaid doesn't want to pay us to just call somebody and say, hey, you okay?
Right.
But the best money that they can spend is that light touch once a month.
Yeah.
Because if you can get somebody who's just starting to have a problem and you can deal with that when it's a smaller problem, then it's a lot better than waiting until the thing has cascaded out of control. Somebody's been evicted. Somebody's lost, their benefits. They forgot to recertify for their Medicaid, whatever it is. And now we've got a real problem on our hands that could cause the whole thing that we've put together to fall apart. So we try and stretch it out and keep ourselves in touch with the person,
mm-hmm.
because also you form a trusted relationship with the caseworker. So it's not just me against the world, it's you and me against the world.
Mm-hmm.
And I trust that person. I know that person. I want that person by my side. And when things start to go bad, then they can call up and they can say, hey, we've got to go into battle. This isn't something I can do alone. But if they're cut off from us for a half a year or something like that, they're less likely to do that.
What?
It's interesting. During Hurricane Sandy,
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, continue.
During Hurricane Sandy, we lost power, we lost, everything that could possibly go wrong because of that hurricane. And 30 people showed up to our office that we hadn't seen in over a year.
Wow.
Because they didn't know what to do, but the last people that really helped them in a meaningful way was us. We walked into the office, and we came into the office even when it was dark because we figured people were probably going to show up.
Mm-hmm.
There's 30 people out in the hallway saying, dude, help me. And we did.
Yeah. Wow. My next question was this, and it's always the toughest question. What are the odds that that person's going to go back to the streets?
It depends on how far into the continuum that you can get them.
Mm-hmm.
When they're early on, 6 months or something like that, there's a pretty high there's a pretty high chance that they're going to slip back somehow. And generally what happens is when you start to feel good about yourself, then some of that drug life or alcohol life may happen, and then you miss your rent payment. And then that's the first domino, and the others start to fall quickly. So when we get a phone call from somebody that typically it's, I haven't paid Con Ed for 3 months and they're going to cut off my power. Okay, the first thing that we do is we deal with the issue at hand. We get the Con Ed thing resolved. But then we have to sit down and say, okay, I know you have enough money because I prepared your budget. So why don't you have the ability to pay Con Ed? And that leads you into the whole drug conversation and everything that goes along with it. So if you can get somebody a year in, then you're okay. But before that, it can be a little bit tenuous.
Now, what's if I were to go out and just pick 10 people at random who were coming out of a homeless shelter at 5 o'clock in the morning? This one right over here, Oasis, where I drive to the station.
Yeah, great place, good people.
How many? What is the average time on the street for people? What's the gamut? I mean, for example, I just took 10 at random. Are any people on the street 10 years, 15 years, 3 years? What's the average, and how long? Yeah, what's the longest you've ever heard of?
Tough. That's like walking onto the New Rochelle train and saying, what's the average life of somebody's working career?
Okay.
It's difficult to say. We can say that it's a systemic thing. It's a long-term thing. And the system is skewed to not be successful.
Well, that's, clearly.
So if you're doing this and you walk in to the office somewhere and you say, hey, can I qualify for this benefit? Maybe you get sent away. At one point, some of the DSS offices in southern Westchester had nobody that could speak Spanish.
You're kidding?
Nope.
Okay.
No, that's not on them. There's turnover there, and you may lose somebody, and it's going to take you a while to get somebody back and all that. But if somebody speaking Spanish walks in, all you can tell them is, can't help you, dude. Learn a language. Come back.
Wow. Okay. Let's move on to the people that have to deal with this. Let's take your caseworkers, and we talked a little bit about it last week. It's one of the toughest jobs I've ever heard of at that income level. It almost seems to me it needs to be a passion. What is their caseload? Your typical...
the average person will see 40 clients.
So in other words, if I were on your payroll doing that, I've got 40 people I got to worry about. Wow.
Yes. So picture, the family member that has some type of a mental illness and how challenging that can be at times, particularly when they need something. And then escalate that need to basic things like food and shelter. Multiply it by 40 and tell the person you have to deal with that on a daily basis, every day. And weekends, generally, because people will blow up their caseworkers' phones because they need things. And it's the basic building blocks to life. It's not, I want a new 500-piece crossword puzzle. I need something that's fun. I want to go to the movies. No, I need housing. Where's my housing? And have 40 people coming at you every day. And when you get somebody situated, then you get a new person and you start all over again. And then on top of it, you put your blood, sweat, and tears into helping this person rebuild their lives or build their lives in some instances. And then something happens. They end up going to jail. They lose everything, and you have to start all over again in 90 days. It's a relentless job, and there's only a few special people who are heroic who can do that job.
Now, what are the hours like, and do they have to leave their phones on all night and all weekend? Is that a part of the gig?
We have an emergency phone and take turns with people carrying the emergency phone. So you can't tell somebody you got to do this from 9 to 5 and then 5 till 9 the next morning. You can't. But
I should think not. Now, the person that gets the emergency phone, typically, particularly in cold weather like this, are they saying, "Well, I won't be sleeping tonight, but that's the gig"? But at least it's only when they have the phone. Okay.
Yeah, and we might get phone calls from the police department who have picked someone up for something and they don't want to arrest them because they understand the particular circumstance. So we may go down in the middle of the night to the police station and hang out with the person until they're feeling better, and then help them get back to their house or where they're staying, and get them situated, get them some food, whatever it might be, and get them back on the right path. And the police do that with an increasing frequency, to their credit, so that they don't have to arrest somebody and cause the client's entire life to implode.
Wow. We all know in our own lives, schizophrenics in middle-class families, people with personality disorders or more likely developmental disabilities, alcoholics, etc., who just can't get it right with all the help in the world. And so I think of that, and then I juxtapose it to what you have to deal with. It's infinitely more difficult. You mentioned earlier that your caseworkers have to be a special breed. They certainly do. But having said that, you mentioned that some people are special. What's special about them, and how do they keep it from dominating their lives, or worse, enabling someone when that's not their intent?
Yeah, so the turnover in case management, not just the choice, but in general, is very high. If you can get a couple of years from a person, generally people will leave in a year, or they'll stick around for a lifetime because they're that special person that appreciates what they're doing and sees the incredible value of what they can provide to other human beings that person may not get if they're not there. So what we find is that people with what they call lived experience are the people that can connect the most, because been there, done that. I understand what you're going through because I went through it, and that also helps to create the bond between the caseworker and the client, to be able to say, you can trust me. I'm not going to hose you. I've been doing this for 10 years. I'm going to be here tomorrow, and I'm the guy that you can trust to be with you throughout this whole process. And that's a really important thing. Now, there are all different kinds of peers, as they call them. There are people who have lived experience within the criminal justice system. Isn't that a nice way of saying you're a felon? But we are encouraged to go out and hire people like that. And then we have to deal with New York State because, they have all kinds of rules for who can and can't deal with people in a particularly vulnerable place in life. And sometimes we can find a great person who has a criminal background with felony or multiple felonies that the state tells us you can't hire them. Well, you want me to hire them, I got to be able to hire them. And then when we finally fight the fight and get them on our payroll, they do absolutely amazing work.
No kidding.
Yeah, because they know the difference that having that helping hand can make. And maybe they didn't have it in their life, and their life was particularly challenging because of it. And then some people, clients in particular, don't want the help because it feels so weird to feel good.
Really?
Yeah,
it almost can make you feel insecure. You know, feeling bad is sometimes a rock to lean on. I remember when I suffered from serious depression, when it was gone, in some ways I missed it. You know, it was like, it was my certainty every day.
When I have nothing to lose, when there's nothing you can take away from me, then what can you do to hurt me? But once I start to have a nice life, and I start to have stuff, and I start to have things that I can lose, no matter how good it makes me feel.
Let me ask you this:
thought in the back of my head.
It's no secret to you or my listeners, because I've been very open about it, that I suffered from very serious depression now 35 years ago. And one of the things that the doctor was very diligent about, and the guy saved my life, and early on with some exceptions, when he said we were done for the day or done for whatever, unless it was an emergency, we were done. And part of the discipline was me learning to live with that. How do your caseworkers not overly coddle someone who needs to be independent? That has to be tough. How do they?
It's like being a divorced parent where you're trying to have a relationship with your kids.
Yeah.
But they know that if you're too tough on them, they can go to the other parent.
Yeah.
There are a variety of case management agencies in Westchester where you can get services. We're not the only game in town.
Mm-hmm.
And if we are too confrontational with someone, particularly around substance abuse and things like that, then they just disengage with us and can go somewhere else.
So they have to hit that sweet spot.
Yeah, that's exactly it. You have to be, loving and caring and firm, but not too much of one over the other. And that's a really hard thing. It's like being a good parent. You got to hit that, as you said, sweet spot.
One more time, I want to remind people who you are. We have 9 minutes left. Guy Fessenden is the executive director of Choice. You may remember them when they first started with a handful of people, I guess almost now 10 years ago. Now they have a staff of, I guess, over 100. They help more than 2,000 people on a regular, ongoing basis. They're in 3 cities, the headquarters in White Plains, a huge facility here, a pretty decent facility here on North Avenue, another one up in Peekskill. I wanted to talk about the challenges of running an organization like this now. I mean, full disclosure, I'm on your board, and I, it's something I've had an interest in it long before I joined it, and admire what you do. You have the red tape that we all know about in terms of dealing with the government. You have that in spades, whether it's to get money from Medicaid, whether it's working with DSS, whether it's working with the jails, whether it's getting access to food stamps. What the patients will never see, nor should they, but what goes on behind the scenes. What's the biggest challenge in running an organization like this?
Actually, the biggest challenge is finding good people that will allow you to be able to expand your services. And we have an unlimited amount of growth that we could realize based on the needs of the community. Mm-hmm. We could double in size tomorrow. And that's how we went from seeing 120 people to 2,000 people. We said, there's changes that are happening in Medicaid, happening in the law, happening in how the government sees its role in helping people. So let's jump on this and take advantage of it. Our ability to grow is entirely predicated on our ability to find good people. Because whenever we can add 5 people, we can add 200 new clients in the snap of a finger, because there's that much need out there. So I would say our biggest challenge is being able to manage our growth in a way that ensures our quality. Because you can go out and hire 5 people tomorrow who don't know anything or do anything, but we're able to bring in another, grow our roster by 10%, 200 people. But we wouldn't be doing anything for them. We'd just be churning numbers. That's not fair.
What about administratively? What's the difficult part of the job?
Oh, my God. It used to be you could work 4.5 days with clients and do about a half a day's worth of paperwork. Mm-hmm. Now, there's about 40% paperwork because more and more people are getting involved, more and more agencies, and then you have to do this, and then you have to make sure, and in the defense of the payers, They want to make sure that the services are being delivered, that they're being delivered properly, that there isn't fraud, and we understand all of that. But it has gotten to the point where the left hand and the right hand aren't necessarily speaking to each other, and we'll get similar types of reports that are to multiple agencies that take time, and it's really tragic because all we want to do is help people. And now more and more of our day is getting Pac-Maned into paperwork and administrative stuff.
Let me ask you.
That's the rules. That's what we have to do.
And that's the job. Before we conclude, I'm going to put you on a pleasant spot because it's a fantasy, but nonetheless, any job worth doing is worth looking at what the ultimate would be. If you had a magic wand and you could create, but it has to be realistic in the sense that it's doable with the funding and the right medications, et cetera. Ultimately, what is the solution that is needed for homelessness? And how much can we hope to achieve when so many people's lives have been filled with these bad habits and this kind of mental illness, drug addiction, and so forth? What would the most successful, plausible solution nationwide look like?
I think earlier intervention. What happens when we meet people is we meet them at the bottom. They have crashed through. It's like you're on the top floor of a building, you crash through the floor, you hit the next floor, you figure, okay, here I am, I'm stable. And then you crash through the next level, and you just keep going and going and going. What we try and do is provide a safety net for people so that when they crash through, like a trapeze artist, they land in the net. They don't crash into the ground.
Mm-hmm.
And to have that ability to be able to provide that for a person sooner, before all of the devastating things happen, before all of the bad things happen, that have them at 80 years old walking the street with a shopping cart with all of their earthly possessions in it. If I could do anything, I would have caught that woman at 22 when this thing probably started and said, let me help you. Let me help you to get to a better place in your life where you have an apartment and you have some benefits and you may have some family supports and you have some people around you that are providing you with a continuum of health care and legal care and all that kind of stuff so that you don't end up crashed down at the bottom somewhere. Or, by the way, from the government standpoint, it's costing them a fortune right, to support that person.
How many of these people, for example, I know of a middle-aged man who really just, he has a good family, so but he drives them nuts. He really does. And he probably belongs in some sort of a community. But how many of these people can only really make it if they're in some sort of a community that's somewhat regimented? And I know that raises all kinds of legal and moral questions, but realistically, when you look at it and your heart of heart clicks into your brain, how many of these people really need that?
Supportive housing is fantastic because take Search for Change, which is probably the best housing agency out there for my money.
Right.
Now, to the extent that my daughter, who's diagnosed with schizophrenia, has lived there for over a decade.
Mm-hmm.
And when she moved out of our home and into that supportive type of living, things got better. Things got better for her. Things got better for the family. And we were able to establish a much stronger and better life together because we weren't on top of each other 24/7.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a number of options in supportive housing. It can be the group home where
so that's
you might
what
have
it's
20
called.
people living in a
now,
big
does
house.
the person have to agree to it? Obviously, and how do you get them to agree to it when they're headstrong?
You go and you see it and you try it, but they don't just have group homes. They have a variety. My daughter now lives in a Search for Change unit where she has a part of the house, a big part of the house, the top half of a big house that has 3 bedrooms, 3 baths. She has 2 roommates, and she can go back to the group home to pack her meds, to get some support, to see her counselor, who will also come to her apartment. So there's a wide variety of structure.
So
it
there
doesn't
is
have
structured
to be the
things,
group
too.
home. Somebody's there 24/7.
Well, again, I say
making sure
group
you
home
don't-
for lack of a better way to put it, but obviously there's a range of these kinds of solutions, if I'm hearing you correctly.
Absolutely, yeah, and it's not one size fits all. There's a recognition that you may start out in a group home, but as you achieve your goals and start to feel better and do better, supportive housing can be everything up to, we've got an apartment, it's independent living, and we'll take care of it. You know, you sign over a portion of your Social Security
Of
check,
course.
for example, or we get some type of a means of payment for it, and go live your life.
That's
fantastic.
That's encouraging. So, where do you think, in the reality that is life today here in Westchester, where your organization hangs its hats, and I use the plural deliberately, what do you think is possible in the next decade or so?
Well, I think we're doing a good job with the next generation of people in schools being taught that mental illness doesn't have to be something that you're just frightened of. Mental illness is people that have something, some type of a diagnosis, the same way somebody with diabetes has a diagnosis. And you don't have to run away from somebody who's got diabetes. Unfortunately, our generation, Bob, is the type of folks that have grown up on TV with all of its hysteria, wanting to get ratings, coming at you with, oh my God, somebody who's mentally ill took a gun and shot this or did that, or and they feed the hysteria, and that just makes it programs us to be frightened. So when we see somebody, all of that in the back of our head says, you know what, that 80-year-old woman with the shopping cart, she's a threat. I need to cross the street. I need to make sure I don't establish eye contact with her. She's not a person. She doesn't deserve any kind of rights, and she's going to kill me and my family. No, she's not. She's 15 times more likely to be the victim of a crime than the perpetrator of a crime. But we've been conditioned, and I think we're doing a better job with the younger generation of saying these are people. They're people who have needs, and they're people that we can help to be able to live better lives, and they deserve that.
Well, you do wonderful work, and it is a privilege to be able to bring your message and your staff's message to the people each week. Now, if people are listening and they know someone that needs help or wants to themselves get help, how can they contact you, or do you prefer they walk in?
They can do whatever they want. They can reach us over the web at choiceofny.org. They can give us a call at 914-576-0173. They can check us out at any of our offices around Westchester, and the addresses are on our website, and we're there to help. So in Westchester, you or a loved one needs a little extra helping hand, that's what we're there for.
Well, listen, thank you very much. Thank you for giving us an hour of your time today. Guy Fessenden, the Executive Director of Choice, helping so many people, 2,000 right now. Please continue doing what you're doing, and we'll talk with you next week.
Thanks, Bob.
Take
Appreciate
care.
it. Okay, so long.
All righty, that slams the lid on things for today. One last look at the weather. The weather brought to you exclusively by United Hebrew of New Rochelle, voted one of America's best rehabilitation and senior care campuses, and it's right here in New Rochelle. Okay, it's 24 now, getting up to 29 today, not much more tonight. Clear to start with clouds building, lows around 15. Yes, it will be cold. Snuggle or wear something warm. Those are your choices. Saturday's the big day if you like snow, but don't get overly concerned. It'll be cloudy in the morning. First snowflakes arriving between 11 and 2 p.m. The snow will be moderate to heavy at times, but most of it, maybe 4 to 5 inches, will be up north of 287. But it will change over, particularly here in the Sound Shore and other places close to the water. It's liable to turn over to 2 or 4 inches and maybe only just an inch, and it'll probably melt. Now, late evening, around 36 degrees, will keep the snow melting. Saturday night, cloudy with any lingering mix of rain showers, ending mainly before midnight. Temperatures will hold fairly steady in the mid to upper 30s. Sunday, partly sunny, breezy and chilly. Highs around 37. Wind chills, though, in the 20s, but still the snow shouldn't be a problem for your Monday morning commute. Now, remember Monday, Martin Luther King Day, and as always, in our 6 o'clock hour, we will play his I Have a Dream speech in toto. Also, don't forget, after this weekend, Jake's Picks of the Week, brought to you by Dominic's Fine Cigars. The results will come your way at 8 o'clock on Monday morning. And Jake's got a record to protect. He's 5-2-1 in the playoffs, 29-22-2 on the year. Can he make it 30? Can he make it 31? We'll find out. Also, as you know, on Monday, George Latimer joins us. We will be joined as well by Bob Cox. Thank you very much for listening, and we thank our sponsors today, the United Hebrew of New Rochelle, a top-rated campus of senior care. Visit uhgc.com. Aging Issues Management, Aging Issues Radio, the law firm of Pena & Kahn, and Plug-in Virtual Reality. I'm Bob Marrone. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you on Monday.